This meeting will be conducted in person and as a courtesy via remote means in accordance with applicable law. Please note that while an option for remote attendance and participation is being provided as a courtesy to the public and board members, the meeting and hearing will not be suspended or terminated if technological problems interrupt the virtual broadcast unless required by law. This meeting will be recorded by the local scene. Members of the public who wish to watch the meeting may do so by viewing the Duxbury Government Access channels, Verizon 39 or Comcast 9. Viewers can also visit the localscene.media/Duxbury for information about Duxbury programming, including streaming and watching replays on Duxbury YouTube. I call this meeting to order, and I'd ask you to all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. First item on the agenda is open forum. This is for items that are not on the agenda tonight. If there's an issue you'd like us to bring up at a future meeting, you may do so and go up to the podium and give your name and your street. I will start with the board. Is there any open forum items for the board members? Go right ahead, Brian.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Two things. One, longtime volunteer and our current planning board chair, Scott Casagrande, will be stepping down on December 31st. I'd like to recognize Scott. He's been a great contributor to the town, and I very much appreciate all the efforts he's provided to us. We'll miss him on our municipal boards and committees.
Yes.
Secondly, I understand this is our last meeting of December, so unless we're going to do it later, I wanted to wish everyone a Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, Happy Holidays, and Happy New Year.
Ditto.
Thanks, Brian. You too.
Thank you.
Yeah,
You as well. Anybody else on the board?
No.
Anybody else in the audience? There being none, I'm going to move on to new business. Little short. I guess I have to wait till 6:35, huh?
Fine. Under Robert's rules, you got 5 minutes swing on either side.
All right. Fair enough. We will need a motion to enter a fee hearing, I believe.
Why don't we do that?
Oh, do we have a motion? Do we need one?
Are we, let's see.
Here is a motion.
Are we not doing Cooper Hill?
You are doing Cooper Hill.
Oh, I'll start with Cooper Hill.
Yeah, why don't we do that?
There we go.
Do you have the revised
What if-
agenda? There was a revised one.
Okay, that's fine.
Is Sharon here?
No, because she's not, it's not the same thing. So this is, okay.
All right. We'll start that again. Why don't we go right in order? Discussion regarding acceptance of easement for Cooper Hill Road. This will be presented by attorney Sharon Everett, who is entering the Zoom.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Hi, Sharon.
Hello.
Hi there. What do you want to tell us about this?
I'm before you the acceptance of Cooper Hill Road as a public way. So as you recall, town meeting re-voted in November to accept Cooper Hill Road as a public way.
Yep.
What you have before you is a draft deed by which the owner of the road conveys to the town the ownership of the road in various easements. It has been signed by the developer and it's awaiting your acceptance so that we can record that and complete the street acceptance procedure.
Great. Thank you. Does anybody have any questions?
I don't have any questions.
No.
All right.
Pretty straightforward.
Anybody from the public? Great. I'll take a motion.
I move the select board approve and execute the acceptance of easements from North Duxbury LLC, accepting Cooper Hill Road as a public way in the town of Duxbury.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right. We are now on time again. 6:30.
Sharon.
Thank you very much,
Thank you,
Sharon.
Sharon.
Happy
Merry
holidays.
Christmas.
All right. 6:35 fee hearing. May I have a motion?
I move the select board open the public hearing regarding the proposed fee changes for the following departments: Board of Health, Harbor Master, and Recreation Department.
Second.
Requires a roll call.
All those in favor?
Fernando,
Brian,
aye.
Oh, start that in.
We'll start that in.
Let's always start this end.
Let's.
See how this night's going to be.
Okay, Cindy, aye.
Amy, aye.
Michael, aye.
Brian, aye.
All right, so now we have,
Let's take Board of Health first.
yeah, Board of Health. Is someone here from the Board of Health that would like to explain the fee changes?
You do? Yeah.
Hi, Lauren, how are you?
Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the board. Lauren Hache, the Assistant Health Agent, Health Inspector for the Board of Health. And I have a very brief presentation just explaining fee change proposal and some new fees that we're lacking. So, a very small fee comparison study, but I gave you a larger spreadsheet. All of our fees are in line with the towns that we conducted the fee compensation comparison study with. We used Plymouth, Marshfield, Situate, and Cohasset. The one fee that we're requesting to increase is the recreational camps fee. Michelle, you can go to the next slide, please. And a recreational camp is a camp for children. It's a day or residential, which includes overnights. Sports, travel, or wilderness programs that offer recreational activities and instruction to campers. Your local Board of Health is the permit granting authority. For recreational camps, we process multiple, it includes multiple inspections and compliance with Mass Department of Public Health regulatory standards. So when an application is submitted, typically in March or April, we'll start the process. And Michelle, you can go to the next slide, please. We're looking for, this is just a few of the items that are required to be included with the application for a camp. So we're looking for their staff information, which includes queries and stories. Obviously, we can't look at the reports, but we want to make sure that the staff that they're going to have on hand have been queried and storied. We're looking for their promotional literature, their healthcare policy, discipline, fire evaluation plan, disaster plan, lost camper, lost swimmer. And then we're also making sure that the local building inspector and the fire department have both been on site, and each year they have to supply a certificate of occupancy from the building department and then a letter from the fire department that states they're in compliance. So, next slide, please. Based off of everything that's required for processing a recreational camp, we'll go out and do the inspection, we'll go through the binder, make sure everything's included, and then once the campers are on site and we've given the permit to the camp, we do another inspection. And this time we're making sure that all of the campers have their health release form and their vaccination status, those types of things, because they might not have that prior to the camp starting. So, and we're just making sure that the staff that are in charge across various parts of the camp have their binders with all of those pieces that we just are required to have on site. So with that being said, we're hoping to increase the fee from $15 to $100 annually. Okay, next slide, Michelle. And then there are a few fees that we don't have right now on our fee schedule that we're hoping to, we're proposing to add. The first is the owner requested housing inspections. These are typically pre-occupancy inspections that require a physical inspection and a report. We don't have a fee in place right now. We don't do a lot of these, but DHCD, or now it's EOHLC, require subsidized apartments to have these inspections. And then anyone who's a property manager that has rentals can request a Board of Health inspection. This is separate from a complaint. We would never charge for a complaint. But we don't have a fee in place right now, so we're requesting or proposing $75 for that fee. A residential kitchen or cottage license, we don't have a line item for that. Yes.
What exactly is a residential kitchen?
I knew you were going to ask. So the state allows very specific items to be made in a residence by one person. They have to have their Serve Safe manager's certification, allergen awareness, and they have to apply to the Board of Health. The items that can be made in a residential kitchen have to be shelf stable. So it's really limited to breads, candies, cookies, saltery.
So then these are sold, right?
Is that what it is?
Yes, and most of the time,
Okay,
they want to sell their product at a farmer's market.
right, okay, now I
Um,
understand. Okay,
So we have a few in town, and I feel like
right.
they've increased since COVID because people are home more.
Yeah.
So we'll go in and we'll inspect the home, make sure it's clean surface, make sure they have all their paperwork.
Right.
We're looking for how they store their ingredients and those types of things, how they can have warewashing for their equipment that they use for what they're making. But like I said, it's very limited. You cannot have cream-filled pastries or cheesecakes, custards. No cut fruits or vegetables or sauces or pickle products. None of that can be made in a residential kitchen. It's very limited to things that are non-TCS, so they're not time and temperature controlled for safety.
Right.
They're shelf stable.
Okay. Why 95? I know, 100. Why 95?
Well, we've been charging the 95 because that's what we charge a catering license.
Oh, okay.
But they're very different. A caterer has to use a commercially permitted kitchen.
Right.
So all along, we've been using that fee, but we didn't have a separate line item for a residential
Okay.
kitchen, so that's where we came up with the 95.
And that's comparable to other towns?
Yes, I believe, well, Plymouth charges 200, but Marshfield is 50, and Cohasset's 75.
Okay.
So, the next is a food establishment plan review. We don't see these often, but we don't have a line item in place. This is when a new restaurant wants to open. The health agent will have to go through plan review to make sure they have the right equipment, ventilation, that type of thing. So we're proposing $100 for that fee. And like I said, that's maybe once a year, not even.
Okay.
But we don't have that dedicated line item. And then the last fee we're proposing is for an outside consultant Board of Health administrative fee. And this comes into play quite a bit when we have more than 3 lots. We have in our rules and regulations that a consultant is hired, an engineer, a third-party consultant. So we coordinate with the engineer and the developer to come up with an amount for an escrow account to process the invoices, but there's no administrative fee for the work that we do in-house. The money goes right to the escrow and then pays the invoices. So we're proposing a $50 fee for that on top of the escrow account. And
Mr.
that's-
Chairman, may I inquire?
Yeah, are you done with your presentation?
Yes.
I don't, okay, great.
Well, no, just
I'll
on,
take some-
on that particular fee. So is the Board of Health engaging the services of an outside consultant? And if so, what would the actual cost be? Because of course, on the fees, all the fees across the town, the intent is to cover our costs. So
Right.
I want to make sure that if we're being charged more than $50, that we can recover that and not hamstring ourselves at $50.
Sure. So with a consultant, for example, we'll have 3 lots they're gonna do perk tests, they're gonna submit an application with a proposed septic system for these 3 lots. So we can review that, but the initial review is by an outside consultant. Typically, we'll coordinate with the developer or whomever the lots are owned by, and with our third-party engineer. They'll look at what's required, how many perk tests we have to do, and then they'll give a figure, let's say $1,500. And so then the developer will submit a W-9 and a check for that amount, and then one of us will create an escrow account through the accounting department and the treasurer collector. And then when those invoices come in from the engineer, they'll send them to us. We'll process those for payment using that escrow. And so there's no fee in place for the actual administrative work that we're doing, if that makes sense.
So, one town, Situate here is 150, Cohasset's 200,
Mhm.
Plymouth's 750. I see that Marshfield's behind us here with $25, but this seems like a lot of work.
It is,
Is there a reason we picked this kind of low number, given all the work of setting up that escrow account and coordinating all that effort?
No, I kind of, the 750 is confusing for Plymouth. I didn't understand that.
That's an
Either-
I'll call that an outlier, but.
Yeah, I mean, we could go higher, it is something that we see probably 5 to 7 times a year, maybe, we're setting these up. And more often as developments come through, those are things that are just outside of what we're comfortable reviewing. So we could, maybe 100 or even 150 would be appropriate.
I'm fine with any of that. I just think it's,
I think the fee, I think that it
For
should
all your
cover
work.
the cost
Yeah.
of the
Time.
service. So if it's more appropriately at 150, we should make it 150. It should
Okay.
be whatever
We think it should
the
be.
expenditure of the town is.
Yeah, so maybe the other way to look at it is how many hours of your time does it take? You know how much
Right.
it's costing the town, right? And so maybe that's the fees based on your time you have to spend doing it.
And then we have to consider the accounting department and
Right.
treasurer collectors that
Yeah,
also
yeah.
process
I
this.
add up all the time everybody does, and
Okay.
that's a fair fee, right?
Yeah.
I would think so.
Yeah.
Okay.
go right ahead.
Kind of on that same note, the camp fee, the recreational camping fee, maybe I'm not thinking of one, but we have, Camp Wing is the big, is probably maybe our only recreational camp in town. But it's a large camp, and it looks like the list is extensive. And when I look at, kind of the towns that we're being compared to, I wonder if they have any camps as large and as busy as a Camp Wing, and if that, again, that nominal fee is really covering the cost associated with all of the list of items.
So Camp Wing is our #1 camp, and there's also other fees that go in. We're also inspecting and permitting the kitchen because they provide food, obviously. And then the 2 pools that they have right now also have separate permits and inspections. The other camps that we have are day camps. Bay Farm Montessori is another one. And then typically we'll have 1 to 3 sports camps that are only a week long. We had a soccer camp last year that is a lot less intensive than Camp Wing. So I don't know how we would separate that.
Camp Wing is it's a wonderful program, don't get me wrong, and I'm not trying to jam up anybody. Again, I think it's just our
Yeah.
goal is to try to cover the costs.
I will say that they're extremely well organized, and so in their binder, just the certain forms change each year because staff is changing, but it is something to think about. I just don't want to increase it too much.
No, I
I hear you.
totally agree.
$15.
Yep.
Well, this seems fair.
Yeah, if you think $100 is enough, we can always revisit it next year
Okay.
if it turns out that you're putting more work into it than $100 worth.
Sure.
I'm ready for a vote. What is the thought on this outside consultant fee? Do we want to change that now, or we want to let them come back?
I can't read my mouse print. What was it at?
$50.
50, but
I think it's more.
probably should be 150 or north.
Yeah.
150.
Let's go 150.
All right.
All right, how about a motion?
All right.
I move that the Select Board approve the recommended charges and fees requested by the Board of Health, with the exception of the
Outside consultant.
outside consultant fee, that being 150 instead of 50. The fees will go into effect on January 1st, 2025.
Second.
Requires a roll call vote.
All those in favor?
Fernando, I.
Cindy, I.
Amy, aye.
Michael, aye.
Brian, aye.
All right. Thank you
for your
very
time.
much.
All right.
Great work.
Thank you.
Thanks, Lauren.
Harbor Master, please. Hi, Jake.
Good evening.
Good evening.
How are we?
We have something for him.
I don't have a cool presentation, I'm sorry, but what you have is existing permits that we issue, and in your packet, these fees were last increased, I say 2 years ago, because technically these wouldn't go into effect until 2025. So in 2023, the current fee is, for a resident recreational shellfish license, is $45. We're recommending that go to $50. A non-resident recreational shellfish license from $150 to, $155. And then you'll see the last category is a senior resident shellfish license and a veteran recreational shellfish license. So by state statute, veterans are entitled to the same fee that you charge for residents. So that's why there was no charge there, because that's what we charge for resident licenses. And you'll see that we're recommending a flat $10 annual fee for that.
Great. There
is a cost to issuing these licenses. There's a physical license. If they buy it online, they have to be mailed. The administrative staff at the municipal services does that. Our daily checks of these permits, and we just want to make sure we're in it. We're all in town. We all know what's going on. I think we need to make sure that we're getting all we can from the incurred costs, and we're covering those costs as much as we can. It's not a substantial amount from our comparison to other communities. We have about 15 or 16 communities. The average senior resident permit is $8, and we're hoping to set a $10 fee and hopefully not having to touch it for a while.
Great. Does anybody?
What are the, I'm sorry.
Of course.
What are the, how do we compare in the resident and non-resident yearly fees?
Yeah, we will be within the average of the 16 communities. So I believe I had non-resident was $158 average, and the resident, I believe, was about $40.
Okay. Thank you.
I'm ready. Yep.
Just a, question, or might be a comment, I'm not sure which. So Jake, as I look at your chart,
Yes.
we're going from 0 to 10 on senior and veteran. If I'm reading this right, so it looks like fiscal '24, the combined number of permits for those two groups are 580?
Yeah.
Okay, so
So
it's not-
40%,
yeah, so
40% of the permits that we do.
Yeah, so it's not
issue.
nothing in terms of costs.
Correct. Yes,
So
absolutely.
you need to recover something in those two, and $10 certainly seems to be modest, given that you have to mail it, and that keeps getting more expensive, seems like every couple weeks. You've got the paper, you've certainly got the enforcement obligation
Yep.
as well. Looks like you're covering that more through resident, non-resident, regular permits. But it's only it's $5 increased for the resident, non-resident, and it's 10 total for senior and veteran. So overall, it's not a big change. But you are covering your costs. That's the important piece.
That's the idea, is to make
Yeah.
sure that we're taking care of
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Jake. I'm ready for a motion.
I move that the Select Board approve the recommended charges and fees requested by the Harbor Master as presented. The fees will go into effect beginning on January 1st, 2025. Requires a roll call.
Second.
Fernando, aye.
Cindy, aye.
Amy, aye.
Michael, aye.
Brian, aye.
Thank you. All right, Steve, you're up. Recreation.
Okay, can everybody hear me?
Yep.
There he is.
I apologize for not being able to be there tonight. Does everybody have my packet in front of them?
Yes.
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 Okay, so all of our fee increases for tonight are just based at the Percy Walker Swimming Pool. The reason for these increases is basically due to a rising cost of utilities, the hourly rate we pay for part-time staff, as well as the chemical costs have gone up, whether you talk about chlorine, bisulfate, sodium chloride, things like that we used often. So we haven't gone up since COVID, and looking around the area and some of the other facilities, we did a lot of research, and these fee increases that we came up with are what we think are fair. If you look, we didn't touch anything as far as memberships go, which I thought might be a question as to why not. My reason for that is that we're a unique facility where we're just a pool. We're not a health club that has a pool. A small percentage of our revenue is based on our memberships, and we didn't feel that we need to increase those anymore. The reason being is if a member at a facility that has a health club, weights, tennis, etc., costs X and we cost Y, we need to keep a separation there. If we get too close to their membership costs, we've seen it in the past, we'll lose not that we have a ton of members, but we'll lose our memberships to those places. It just makes more sense to pay a little bit more to get a lot more, since, again, like I said, we're just a pool. But where we did find it would be beneficial for us to raise our fees were in our lessons. I can just go through it if that works for you. If you look, our lessons for resident members, they're currently it's $86.40 for 6 weeks, once a week for 30 minutes. We're going up to 100 there. And then if you double the lessons that are twice a week, we've doubled that. So from 172 up to 200. Resident non-member from 96 up to 110. And the twice a week from 192 up to 220. On the next page, just other categories, non-resident member from 114 to 125. If you go twice a week, from 228 up to 250. Next category is the non-resident non-member, the once a week from 120 up to 135, and the twice a week from 240 to 270. We then have what we call miscellaneous fees. Our daily guest fee, which is if you just wanted to drop in and swim, the adult is going from $7, we'd like to go up to $10, and then the child from 5 is going up to 7. Our swim meet fees, long-term rental, diving board rental, and multi-purpose room rental, we are not going up. Our next increase would be for our pool parties, which are very popular. And looking around at different, we compared this not only to pools, but to other places where parents like to host birthday parties, and our increase up to $250 is still an extremely fair price. In increasing these fees too, we go under the, well, I do, under the impression that, like we've always been, we're a service more than a for-profit business. So we're not gonna, and you'll see this when we come to our Aqueduct swim team. That's an in-town swim program. It's not a club/AAU program. You know, some people might pay thousands of dollars a year to join that. That wasn't our intention when we started the Aqueducts. They're very, very popular. The numbers are going up every year. And so with that, we've jumped from, as you can see, level 1 and 2 went from $19 a practice to $23. Level 2, I'm sorry, 20 to 25. Same with level 3 and 4 from 20 to 25. I do see, I'm sorry, I skipped from pool parties, I jumped down Aqueducts. We had a few other increases. Our private lessons, we went from $35 up to $50. Strictly, we pay our instructors more now than we did 3 or 4 years ago. Our Friday night pool parties and our dive-in movies from 25 to 40. The 25 is our original price. Since then, stuff has gone up. As basic as it costs more to buy pizza for the pizza party part of the pool party and the Friday night lights. And then down towards the bottom, we've got our water aerobics and our Zumba, Aqua Zumba classes. As you can see, the increases. Resident 40 to 70, resident senior 36 to 65, non-resident 50 to 90, non-resident senior 45 to 75, and a drop-in from $7 up to $10. The Aqua Zumba,
those cost a little bit more, those meet a little more frequently, and those also require water weights and things like that that we have to purchase, so therefore, the resident is gonna go from 70 to 100, resident senior 63 to 90, non-resident 100 to 140, non-resident senior from 90 up to 125, and then that drop-in fee from $10 to $13. And those are my recommendations for the fee increases.
Thank you,
in our
Steve.
department at the Percy-Walker Pool.
Steve, I just have a comment. I'm not going to have you change all these, but with the non-resident and the non-member fees, member of the Y, and I can tell you that if you are a non-member, I think they hit you with twice as much for all their programming as a real benefit to being a member. And, you know, I certainly, you know, I respect all that you're doing here for the public, and this is not a for-profit organization, but one thing I think about to try to offset the cost to our residents and resident members is maybe jumping up those costs for people, especially non-member, non-residents that are using the services. There should be some benefit, a bigger benefit to getting a membership at least. Just a thought, but I think all these fees are appropriate at this time, and I'm satisfied with them.
Sure, Mike, and I don't disagree with that premise you're bringing up. My fear is that if we push the membership too hard, we do lose those people to other clubs.
Okay. Go ahead.
Cindy's got something.
Hi, Steve. Cindy Ladd-Fiorini. Oops, I just lost me there. This is having to do with the water aerobics and the aqua Zumba. And I see just below that there's a little box that says water aerobics, aqua Zumba, seniors get a 10% discount. And when I go up and I look at the resident versus resident senior, the math isn't working out to 10%. And the same with non-resident to non-resident senior. I think that's right, $1428. I'm just wondering if that either the box should go away and you don't, I mean, because the seniors are already getting a discount.
Cindy, I apologize for interrupting. The page should have been cut off prior
what?
to that box. You're right. You're exactly right. Draw an X through that box. We've already incorporated our discounts in the rates.
Right, okay. All right, thanks.
So, no, thank you for pointing, and I'm drawing an X through this on my sheet here. So thank you for pointing that out.
All right, you're welcome.
Any other questions?
I do.
Go right ahead.
In fact, Cindy asked one of mine. Thank you, Cindy. The other is sticking with the aerobics and the Zumba at the bottom. We have residents, two different types of residents, regular resident and resident senior. I realize the resident seniors are getting a discount, but I see that both the resident and resident senior prices are going up. The resident seniors, and I've had many discussions as we're talking about the budget with seniors and fixed incomes. What sort of numbers do we have with resident seniors on water aerobics and aqua Zumba, and what do you expect the outcome of a significant fee increase will be on their use of these programs? And I ask for resident seniors in particular, number one, because of the fixed income, and number two, they're already paying the underlying property tax, and we're going to be talking about an override tonight, and if that moves forward, then they'll be paying for that as well. So I'm just curious to know a little bit more about the rationale behind raising the resident senior rates as high as, or to the same extent that we're raising the regular resident rates.
Yeah, we feel that in the feel down there is that these prices, and everyone that I speak to that's in those classes, who they are about the most loyal people you'll ever find. During COVID, they brought lounge chairs in, socially distanced, out in the parking lot while the pool facility was closed because it's such a part of their life, discussed how they, to a person, feel they're getting, and they're all aware, a huge deal for their money with what it's been, that we've been underpricing that quite a bit. So if you're asking me from a business point of view, I don't think we lose people because of this.
Okay. Thank you.
Less than $10 a week.
We'll take a motion.
All right. I move that the Select Board approve the recommended charges and fees requested by the Recreation Department as presented. The fees will go into effect on January 1st, 2025. Roll call vote.
Second.
Fernando, aye.
Cindy, aye.
Amy, aye.
Michael, aye.
Brian, aye.
All right. We can, do we have to step? Yes, we have to close that public hearing.
We will. I move that
Thank
the
you very
Select...
much.
Thanks,
Thank you,
Steve.
Steve.
Happy holidays.
I move that the Select Board close the public hearing regarding the proposed fee charges for the Board of Health, Harbor Master, and Recreation Department.
Second.
Or as a roll call.
Fernando, aye.
Cindy, aye.
Amy, aye.
Michael, aye.
Brian, aye.
All right. And we have another public hearing. We're a little late on it, 6:45. This is
sorry.
continued from December 2nd, 2024, a discussion regarding a Class 2 used car dealer's license application from Michael Staples, St. George Street Garage, located at 260 St. George Street. Could I have a motion to continue that public hearing?
I move that the Select Board continue the public hearing recessed from December 2nd, 2024 regarding the Class 2 used car dealer license application for St. George Street Garage, LLC.
Second.
Requires a roll call.
Fernando, aye.
Cindy, aye.
Amy, aye.
Michael, aye.
Brian, aye.
Jen, may I have Mr. Wazlewski, our Municipal Services Director, give us an update on this? If you could jump up to the podium.
Good evening. The latest update is I forwarded a letter to the applicant, 260 St. George Street, that they need to obtain a special permit from the Zoning Board of Appeals. And I worked with council and reviewed all the information we had about it. And the use itself was abandoned when they turned in their surety bond, I guess, or a bond they had for it in 2018. And in reviewing with council, they upheld that with some previous cases that when someone turns that in, they relinquish that use. And so therefore they have to reapply for that, and that'll involve some site plan review from the planning board and an application. I have a meeting with them tomorrow morning to just let them know what the process is.
So even though
Chair?
it's- sorry.
I have a question.
Yeah, I'm just thinking too. Go ahead.
Yeah. So, that bond was relinquished in 2018, but that garage has been operating nonstop ever since, right?
Yeah, but I don't.
So why has that happened? If they released the bond, we should have shut it down, right?
So they released the bond for auto sales.
Or is it for auto
Was in-
sales?
Yeah, it was just for auto sales. That's what the Class 2 license was, just for auto sales. There was one issued, I have no information in the street file as to when, why, or how that was issued without any review from the Zoning Board of Appeals. And what we couldn't determine was that, was it a pre-existing non-conforming use, and is that why that was issued? I have zero information about that.
Because, sorry,
Go ahead.
It is, just to be clear, it is an MB2. It is an accepted use for that lot and location.
Right.
It just requires a special permit or an amendment to the existing special permit for the zoning board of
You can
appeals.
just to follow on, it seems a bit tough, right? If the zoning board of appeal turns it down, right? And it's been operating that way.
Well, they can still operate as a garage and all the other uses that are there. It's just as far as auto sales go. That requires the Class 2 license and an accepted use, which just really is essentially a site plan review for parking.
Okay. And it is an accepted use with a special permit.
In that district, NB2. That one lot is in NB2 district.
Number 2 district. Okay.
and
Thank you.
had the practice of selling cars continued nonstop, your grandfather for 2 years, but because there's something to do with this bond that
Yeah,
is the
because they
trigger.
willfully, I guess, turned it in, is my understanding from council, that court cases have upheld that they've abandoned the use as a car sales
As a car sales.
dealership. Not the other use, the garage and all that stuff stands.
That's unfortunate for them.
It is
So,
unfortunate, yeah.
but rules are the rules.
We could not find anything in the records. We researched some of the older records and the special permits prior to what we have in place now were filed by year and number. They weren't filed by address, and they weren't necessarily in a street file, so we looked at some of the time frames, and I sick my awesome ZBA administrative assistant Lauren Hache on it for a while after I was exhausted with it, to try and find if there were any other clues that we could find, any other special permit. We couldn't find one.
There
Jim?
was no one with historical knowledge. No one on the board recalled the last time. No.
I didn't reach out to all the board members. I don't typically do that.
Jim, I know you're meeting with these folks tomorrow, and they're present tonight, but what kind of timeline on this to get ZBA approval? I don't want to ask you to speak
The
for...
process, because of public noticing and all that, is about a 4 to 6 month process. Yeah. You know, sometimes we can try and push that stuff through. We're in the holidays and, you know, all that kind of stuff. It's typically minimum, it's about 35 days from the time they put in an application because of public noticing and getting it written up and all that, before we can get them onto a meeting. And at that point, hopefully they're successful through that process. And then there's a time frame where we have to review the minutes, write up, do a draft on the decision. That gets reviewed by whatever ZBA member. That gets sent back to us, and then there's a 20-day appeal process that has to take place. So it's a lengthy process.
And at some point, it then comes back to us for the Class 2
Yeah,
consideration.
once that gets approved, then they would come to you folks for the approval on the Class 2.
Okay.
All right.
And the unfortunate little gap that happened in this particular application was that I wasn't really notified about it until the application was already in the hands, and that's when I received a call. Hey, have you looked at this? And I didn't know about it at the time. Otherwise, I would have made us add expectation for them prior.
It would have been an invalid license, though, if we had issued it.
Exactly.
So we're taking no action at the moment.
Correct.
Here, so we're not denying it.
Right.
But we can't approve anything. We can consider it again once all the other permits are applied for and received.
That's my understanding.
Okay.
Can we,
Yeah, absolutely. You know, and I'm sorry about all this. I truly am. Mr. Staples, you're here and you've been patient. You've been here on the last date. I know you're meeting with these folks tomorrow. If you have a question or something, you can certainly ask it, but
can we hear from Mr. Staples?
you're welcome to. Yeah.
Mike Staples, St. George Street Garage. I just want to say I do have, before we do, there was other things, because we started this in October. We were told right along everything was good to go. I do hold a bond, so that is already all set. And on the online portal says my license is active, and so I don't know. I just know it's been doing the same thing forever. I just don't really know what the benefit is to spending all this extra money and time for this. I don't know how long it's been. A used car, new dealership since before I was born. So
My only, if this was an error in some way, if we find out his bond is valid or some, I don't know, or if council has a different opinion, certainly bring it back to us sooner, because I don't want to delay this anymore. They're a local business, and this is unfortunate. It was an active car dealership for a number of years. So.
I'm just confused with there's been no change. I didn't,
Well, what Mr. Wozlowski is saying is that the previous owner of the license for the car dealer piece of it, relinquished his bond.
Yeah.
And that's the break here in 2018. That was 6 years ago. So if he hadn't, just, I guess, passed it along to you, we would be just talking about a license. So it's the bond. Is that correct?
That is correct.
So the bond in place now is irrelevant?
Your bond?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've
Mr.
been
Waz,
there since 2005.
Mr.
but,
Waz.
you know, yeah.
Mr. Wazlewski can answer that, yeah.
Again, confused. You've had a bond since 2005?
No, I've worked there since 2005. I took
Yeah.
over the manager position in 13, but I recently got the bond when we reapplied for the license.
Right.
So that's all set.
Yeah.
So I can comment on the fact that the use by the bond turning in, according to my counsel when we reviewed this, was abandoned. And because it was abandoned, it no longer is permitted. And the thing that makes this a little more challenging is that in the special permits we have on file, it does not mention anything about auto sales. I don't know if that original bond, when it was issued, I am not privy to that information at this time. But it doesn't really matter. It's a moot point. When we reviewed it with council the other day, we were all trying to look to see how we could allow this use to continue. And the fact that the bond was relinquished and it's no longer valid, the use is valid on that property for auto sales.
Go ahead, Amy.
I just want to say, I think it's unfortunate, and this is a hiccup in the process, but the process is in place to protect the residents. And, this was a change, there was a trigger, you didn't know about it. Again, unfortunate, but, with the site plan review, it allows for, the boards that are charged with this to look at, the way the traffic is going to flow on the property, make sure that, there isn't going to be excessive kind of what we were doing up here when we first looked at it, but they're going to do that more in depth. So it is a process that protects not only, the residents in that area, protects everyone. It protects the groundwater from, stuff that happens at a car lot. So, again, it's unfortunate, but these rules are in place for kind of good reason.
I can't speak for the boards in this matter, but given the history of it, I think it would be favorable, provided that, that they're going to listen to the neighbors and any concerns they might have, and it's really meant to be a cohesive process.
Yeah.
So everyone's involved and the expectation is met. And I feel bad that situation is occurring for you right now.
I think we all do.
Don't love the fact that that is the case, but it is what it is, and I'm sorry about that.
Well, if there's any way we can expedite this in any way,
Yeah, we'll
I'd
do whatever
appreciate
we
it.
can on our end, for sure.
Yep.
All right, do we need to take any action tonight?
Well, we need
Close the hearing.
I've got a motion for you.
Okay.
Well, yeah. I move that the Select Board close the public hearing regarding the Class 2 used car dealer license application for St. George Street Garage LLC without approval or disapproval.
Second.
Requires a roll call.
Fernando, aye.
Cindy, aye.
Amy, aye.
Michael, aye.
Brian, aye.
Sorry.
All right. We're going to have a discussion regarding, oh, do we have to, you left it, all right. Discussion regarding a compensation and classification study. This is going to be presented by Ms. Jeannie Horn of our Human Resources. She's our Director of our Human Resources. We also have Katie Yee here from GovHR.
Good evening. I'm Jeannie Horn, the Human Resources Director for the town of Duxbury. And I just want to say a few words before Katie starts. First, I want to recognize that these last few weeks have been extremely difficult for our workforce. While this period of uncertainty regarding the fiscal year 26 budget is challenging, we remain focused on fulfilling our responsibilities in service to the community of Duxbury. So I'm here tonight with Katie Yee, as you mentioned, of GovHR, MGT, who's joining us via Zoom to present the draft classification and compensation report. Katie brings over 25 years of experience in multiple public sector settings, focusing on organizational development, compensation, recruitment, retention, and training and staff development. We presented this report to employees last month, outlining the scope of work, job evaluation, and market survey process, proposed compensation plan, implementation, and future administration. This is actually the second time that the town has conducted an enterprise-wide classification and compensation study across 4 individual employment contracts, 6 collective bargaining units, as well as non-management, as-needed, and management positions within the personnel policies. It's important to continually examine our classification and compensation system so that we can remain competitive in the marketplace and avoid pay compression internally. Many thanks to all of our employees who contributed to this important effort by submitting job analysis questionnaires, updated job descriptions, and participating in position interviews. It's a massive undertaking across 131 job titles. So a copy of this presentation, the draft report, and the related communications are all available on the Town of Duxbury's Human Resources Department webpage under GovHR, MGT, Town of Duxbury Classification and Compensation Studies. And just want to note that the town has not examined the report's recommendations pertaining to union positions, as those must be considered as part of the upcoming collective bargaining process. So most of the specifics that we'll be talking about tonight would pertain to the non-union employees, but the overall report includes union positions as well. And I will turn it over to Katie.
All right. Good evening. Thank you very much for the introduction. Can everyone hear me okay? Can I get like a thumbs up or something?
Yep.
Or a yes?
Yep, we're all good.
Okay, great. All right, thank you. So again, my name is Katie Yee. I've been with GovHR. Now we are MGT for right around 2.5 years now, working primarily on classification and compensation studies. Prior to joining the GovHR MGT team, I did work in the public sector in human resources for close to 30 years, but I don't like admitting that. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen at this point so you can see our presentation. And I believe once I go into presentation, oh, nope, I can still kind of see you, I think, there. Okay, I might not be able to see you. So I'll try and make sure I take pause in case there's any questions, but definitely when I'm done sharing my screen, I'll be able to see everyone in order to take questions. So again, we've worked with Duxbury now on a classification and compensation study, and we're going to go through the agenda here for you real quick. Basically, I'll talk about the scope of work, the job evaluation process, which leads to the classification plan, the market survey process, which then leads to a proposed compensation plan, some of our recommendations regarding implementation of a classification and compensation plan, future administration of systems, and then any questions. So scope of work, there's a lot of bullet points on this slide, but basically we start out by having study preparation meetings, project meetings. We worked a lot hand in hand with your human resources department. The whole team was fantastic to work with. We go through a process of determining comparable entities for the survey process. We had an employee kickoff meeting. We conducted a market survey, analyzed the market data, went through the job evaluation process, which included interviews with many of the employees, put together a classification and compensation plan, a draft report. Tonight is a presentation. We also did a presentation to the employees, and then from here we will finalize the report. So as Jeannie mentioned, we looked at about 131 job classifications and through the classification or the job evaluation process. Now, a job evaluation process, what that does is it's kind of a systematic arrangement of positions into buckets or groupings based on a consistent set of factors. And up on the screen is what you see are the 9 factors that we use within our job evaluation process. Those are education and experience, decision-making and independent judgment, responsibility for policy development or policy interpretation, planning of work, contact with others, supervision, so basically the number of employees supervised, working conditions, and then also use of technology as well as specialized equipment. So when we were going through the job evaluation process to develop the classification plan, the positions were evaluated not only on the job description, but also on a job analysis questionnaire that employees completed, and that included those 9 factors, and then some supervisory comments on the job analysis questionnaire. And then we also conducted virtual meetings with the employees. We interview at least one employee from each position. If a position has more than one incumbent in it, then we can meet with up to 3 or 4 employees at one time. So we take all of that information and then we actually, put together some initial recommendations. We review it with administration and human resources, and then we make some more kind of fine tuning to it and come up with a proposed classification plan. That classification plan is then considered your process for establishing internal equity, meaning how positions relate to one another within the organization. So again, it kind of groups positions based on how they responded to the job analysis factors and puts them together in like buckets. Those buckets then are translated into salary grades. So our proposed classification, which is in Table 1, and I'll pop to Table 1 at the end, but our proposed classification plan has 15 grades in it. Now, at the same time that we're going through the classification job evaluation process, we are also conducting a market survey to do the compensation part of the plan. And the market survey then is considered your external equity. So the internal is the classification and the structure, and the external is the market survey. And that's when you're pulling in data to kind of see where you fit within the employment market. So the first step in that process is to establish comparable entities or agencies or municipalities, whatever word we want to use. Within the state of Massachusetts, we use the following 8 criteria, all because we have a very consistent source of pulling that data from the Department of Revenue. We use population, per capita income, equalized assessed value per capita, total assessed value, tax levy, total budget, state aid, and proximity. So after we look at those particular factors, we assign like weights or points to those, and then come up with a scoring system that all around the communities. And out of those, we came up with comparable entities that achieved at least a 50-point score. And you can see listed up there on the screen are the communities that we surveyed for the market survey. Now, fortunately, we did collect an awful lot of data for this particular study. You can see that there's only one community on that list where we were unable to collect data. And we did this a variety of ways. We reached out and requested data. We went on their websites and we pulled any information that they might have had up on their websites. So we really were able to pull together a nice selection of data for this process.
Can I stop you there right for a second? Why did we add?
Sure.
Why did we add Plymouth and Whitman? I see that was added at the request of Duxbury. Plymouth is no way comparable to Duxbury in per number of population, and it's basically a city. I mean,
Because there are positions in Plymouth that that people have expressed a desire to replicate here, or there are positions that are similarly aligned. Same is true with Whitman.
anybody else?
You gotta have-
I
you
believe
gotta-
it
we've got
were
big
those
and
in
small and everything in
proximity too,
between.
right? Like you might have had some interactions with either losing employees to those
Yeah.
communities or having employees come join your team.
I mean, we could lose employees to Boston too. I mean,
But we lost 4 to Plymouth.
it is what it is. I mean, it's not is what it is, but it is not comparable as far as a
The
town.
law of averages, when you've got that many communities, evens it all out.
And one of the things that we do when we get the data back from the market survey is we do clean the data. And what I mean by that is we review it for any outliers or position matches that don't seem to be a good fit. So I always kind of tell my clients that I'd rather cast a wide net and then clean the data when it comes back in versus maybe narrowing my focus too much and not getting enough data. So, if for some reason those communities, their data came back and it really wasn't a good fit, we probably would have taken it out of the report.
And I think from a glaring perspective here, obviously Duxbury is a unique town in a lot of ways, and a lot of good ways. But in addition to a town like Plymouth being very large, their commercial is significantly bigger than our town. And I know some of these other towns also have big commercial bases.
Yeah, Marshfield, Hull,
Yeah.
Cohasset, I mean, there's a lot in there. But in this, when you're doing the comparables, right, when you're comparing Plymouth, for instance, a DPW director in Plymouth, do you understand the scope and scale of that job, and you compare it to the scope and scale of the Duxbury DPW director's job? Is that, do you do that?
Well, so again, one of the things we do look at is the data when the data comes back. If it doesn't seem to be a good fit, we will clean the data and we will remove that from our data set. Now, each community is always going to have nuanced differences, but market data is still considered to be one of the best kind of sources for establishing competitive salary ranges within your jurisdiction or your organization. So not all positions are always going to align perfectly. However, with that said, we do have a process for reviewing it. If we question a job description, we might reach out to that other community and ask them for more clarification on a position match. But we also worked with Human Resources and had them help us go through the data too, since they're obviously more familiar with the communities around them, than I might be, and so they might know some of those differences, and they might say, yeah, that position's very different in that community. Let's take that one out and let's not use it. So we do go through a cleaning process with it.
It kind of makes sense, right? So I looked at right at the back of that report, and I just looked at the police chief, right? So the Marshfield police chief gets paid $250, right? And ours get paid less, $180, and that kind of, it makes sense because obviously that's a much larger community. He's got a much larger force that is irresponsible. So I suppose you can apply some judgment when you look at the results and kind of fit, maybe visually, so to speak, looking at the numbers. That kind of makes sense. Basically, well, Marshfield 250, ours 180. It kind of feels that you can understand the difference. So we're not going to pay our police chief 250 the same as Marshfield, right? Because we understand that there is a difference in the town. So it allows you to kind of calibrate of where we are. I think that's what I'm hearing. And does that make sense?
Yes, and I think the other important thing to note is that whenever possible, we try and use salary ranges for our analysis versus actual salaries. So salary ranges, meaning the minimum and the maximum of a salary range, are a better gauge of the market than actual salaries. I've been in public sector for a long time, and you've got a lot of factors that go into someone's actual salary sometimes. You might have longevity. You might have somebody who's been with the organization, 30, 40 years, and their salary is going to look very different from somebody who just came in a couple of years ago. So when we're collecting this data, we do try and use minimums and maximums rather than actual salaries. Now, with that said, in a few situations, we do have to use actual salaries because there may not be range data available for us. And when we do that, we set up some parameters around that actual salary, and we actually look at 10% below and 20% above the averages and the percentiles. so that we're kind of creating a spread out of that. Again, acknowledging the fact that, you know, there's a lot of variables that go into incumbents' actual salaries that you may not necessarily be aware of through a survey process. I hope that makes sense. But that's kind of where this, I popped over to the next slide, because, you know, it talks about, you know, salary data is reviewed to determine if the information is appropriate, and salary ranges are our preferred method versus actual salaries. But salary data overall is considered to be the current market for the position. So from there, what we do is we develop a proposed compensation plan and a proposed classification plan. The proposed compensation plan, what we did for Duxbury this time is we put together some recommended rates calculated at both the 60th and the 65th percentile of the market. And what does that mean? Well, 50th percentile is usually right in the middle. So 60th means a little bit higher than that. So at 50th percentile, that would mean that 50% of the communities are paying below and 50% are paying above. At the 60th percentile, that would mean that 40% are paying above and 60% are paying below. And last time that Duxbury went through this process, they went with the 60th percentile, and this time we took a look at the 65th percentile just to see like what that might look like in terms of you know, salary ranges, potential costs, that type of thing, and also kind of, you know, what that competitive edge might provide to the town. So both of those were calculated as options. Again, we recognize that everything we put together here is a recommendation, and that a lot of this, you know, are options and depends on how the community implements it, you know, and as Jeannie mentioned, depend on collective bargaining agreements in many cases.
Mr. Chairman, if I could, I have some questions on specific things.
Sure.
But would you rather I wait till the
No,
end of the presentation?
Go right
Because I
ahead.
think with this particular recommendation to go to a 65th percentile, I have some concerns with that. It sets up a chasing our tail situation. So if we are constantly trying to achieve a 65th percentile, and other towns are doing similar comparisons and studies and adjusting their compensation plans accordingly, we are going to set up a cyclical chasing our tail. They're going to raise, we're going to raise, they're going to raise, we're going to raise. What strategies are we implementing to maintain the competitive compensation levels without this continuous increase and the financial burden that entails?
We use 60th. We stuck with 60th. We looked at both, but we're going to use 60th.
I think the question is why not use 50?
Thank you.
Attraction, retention.
So if we're at 60 and other neighboring towns are going to 60, again, we're going to constantly be adjusting up and up and up and up. And
True. Depending on the position, some are going to 80. We're trying to keep it affordable. That's why we went with 60.
I'm trying to keep it affordable, I feel like, in this conversation. So I'm raising that concern, so just.
But this is the big point in the conversation, right? This is what we choose. Is it 50, 60, or 65? So what I'm hearing is you're recommending 60s, right? Right?
Maybe we ought to run through the rest of it.
Well, before she continues, Mr. Chairman, if I can just ask,
Sure.
based upon some of the comments Katie's already made, and I had been back and forth with Jeannie a month ago when this draft first came out, so a number of questions I had already asked have been answered, so I'm happy to share those in a little bit. But Katie had mentioned internal equity and external equity. I think, and this gets to Amy's question, I think, about how we compare to other communities. And let me put this to Katie. When we're talking about the external equity, meaning what a job description means through the the survey. So let me just take you through a scenario. If somebody's in position X in Plymouth and Duxbury is hiring for something called position X, are we reasonably confident that the candidate is going to understand what it is that we're expecting in that position? In other words, they may have the same name, but in terms of external equity, is there a general consensus among communities as to what the job titles mean in terms of responsibilities?
Yeah, definitely. So we do these classification and compensation studies, you know, across the United States, right? So, and in a lot of situations, job titles are very similar. Again, there might be nuances in the types of responsibilities that someone is assigned, because each community is a little bit different. Some of the smaller communities, you know, you might have to wear more hats. You know, I'm working with a community right now where their inspectors do everything, you know, health, building, zoning, like the whole bit, because they're a smaller community. But, you know, in a larger community, it might look a little different. So I'm not sure if that answers your question, but yes, in many situations, the job titles do align across multiple communities.
So, okay, because I think what I heard is that the work itself may not be the same from community to community, and just not to put words in your mouth, Amy, but I think the concern that this board has is if we're looking at 50, 60, 65, I certainly would be interested in knowing if candidates are coming here and doing more than what the job title would otherwise be expected to do. That to me leans more like to a 60, as opposed to if you're coming from, I'm just picking a category out of there, a clerk position, and it's going to be essentially the same work here in Duxbury. To me, that's more of a 50 than a 60. In other words, we need to pay people for the value that they're actually providing to the town, and not necessarily chasing a number. And I realize we have to be sensitive to the market, but I'm just trying to connect the dots here in terms of how we evaluate what percentile is most appropriate for our town. To Mike's point, given that we are, and we love to be very unique, but we need to make sure that we're able to attract and retain the fantastic professionals that we have in our ranks and who provide services to our residents. And of course, this is the nut we're trying to crack here.
Yeah.
If I could just add to that, you know, the town went with the 60th percentile last time they established pay ranges during the last study that they did. And as we were collecting the data and bringing the data back in, I think one of the positive things that came out of our analysis is that really the town has maintained a position at about the 60th percentile. So you are currently paying at about the 60th percentile, give or take, in most situations. So I think that's one thing to consider. In regards to the 50th percentile, I will say that the bulk of the communities that I'm working with right now are looking at least the 60th percentile and up, just because the job market has been so challenging over the past several years. It kind of goes up and down and all over the place. You know, there's a handful that are still, you know, getting to the 50th percentile, but a lot really are looking at those at a little bit higher in order to maintain that market competitiveness.
Mr. Chairman, if I might also take this opportunity to, as we move through this compensation study, and I probably should have mentioned this earlier, I didn't, but I think for me, the methodology that is used is flawed. And the reason being that the fringe benefits are not included in this study. So we are not comparing apples to apples. We don't know if the other towns have you know, benefits that are better or or not, or worse than ours. Benefits like health care. What are these other towns, the town's contribution versus the employee's contribution? What are those health benefits? What are they entitled to? What are their options? What are their vacations and retirement plans like? We are not seeing the whole picture. So to just pluck out the salary portion of a much larger package, I think makes this study, in my opinion, quite flawed.
Mr. Chairman, if I can, Amy,
Jeannie wanted to
I
respond to that,
asked
too.
that same question initially, and Jeannie has an answer to it.
Sure. I understand your question and your concern. And the previous study that we conducted with GovHR about 3 years ago included all of those elements that you just raised. And what we found is, by and large, Duxbury's vacation policy was more generous than most. Our health insurance cost share was also more advantageous than most communities. Of course, the communities have changed a little bit. Last time we examined classification and compensation, we had 16 communities. This time we have 18. But the 18 communities that we have are more contiguous and more relevant to the community in terms of the community, our community competitors. Not only are they comparable, but these are the exact communities that we are competing against for talent. So those are the communities that we're focused on. So we are, in order to examine compensation in an apples-to-apples manner, we are looking at base compensation. And the base rate for compensation, there are very few questions about, because we took that compensation directly from collective bargaining contracts. We took them from existing documents within the town governance. So they came from personnel policies, they came from collective bargaining contracts. We did not accept numbers. They had to be provided in a contextual basis. So we fully examined that. The one exception to what I'm describing is public safety. So we did, based on our learnings, every day is a school day, as I say. And we did learn from our last experience that we did want to include educational incentive for police, fire, and public safety dispatch, because that is increasingly part of their quote-unquote base compensation. So in order to remain competitive in those marketplaces, we did take the extra step to include that additional fringe compensation, if you will. And I believe Katie has a hard stop at 8, just to put that out there.
I made other arrangements, so thank you though.
Can I just clarify the point? So, Jeannie, do we call it total rewards in the public sector? In private sector, it's called total rewards.
Yeah.
It's pay, it's vacation, it's insurance, it's everything that you earn as a result of being an employee for an enterprise. And my understanding is, and I think you just described, that this compensation study is based upon total rewards. So when we're saying community A versus B, we're looking apples to apples?
So yes, at Fidelity Investments, we also referred to the employee benefit compensation package, or the employee compensation package, as total rewards. The private sector the public sector is a little bit behind the private sector, so that's a newer concept to us. We are working in that direction, but for the purposes of this study, we looked purely at pay for this particular study. But I will say, we just completed a classification and compensation study 3 years ago that examined all of the other fringes that we discussed. So we absolutely have our finger on the pulse of the total compensation available to our other competitive set communities and how we rank there. So, it has been considered, but I will also say that when public sector employees consider a position, they are extraordinarily focused on the pay. The rest of it is assumed to be a fairly beneficial offer, and it doesn't vary that widely from community to community. Of
But
course,
that's not what we're doing here. We're not comparing
But that's not the point of the study.
to the private sector. What we're doing is we're comparing community to community, and I reiterate my concern.
Right.
Because all I hear, and I respect what you're saying, but it doesn't change the fact that, yes, okay, we did it 3 years ago, and we know that Duxbury offers a better compensation plan. I believe that's what you said, than most of the communities.
that is not what I
No?
said. No. So there's
I thought you
total
said
rewards.
Slightly better health, slightly better vacation. Where was there something that wasn't
So
slightly better?
What I was referring to is the additional benefits that employees, so they're two separate things. The primary purpose of our classification and compensation study is to examine pay. Secondarily, understanding the value in exploring the rest of the compensation that employees receive. Because of my experience with the private sector and my experience here in Duxbury, we fully examined all of the additional benefits that people receive 3 years ago. Understanding where our value lands within our competitive set community. So in order to re-examine that, it would be extremely costly. We have done this much more frequently than our competitive set communities, so we definitely have a much better understanding of all of our competitive set communities. So what this study is focused on is pay, because pay is what drives people to go to another community. So we've lost 18 different, there are 18, really 22 unique job titles that we, across our organization, across the 131, where, because we conduct exit interviews after everyone leaves, where people have left for more pay. People are not leaving because the vacation is better at a different place. They're not leaving because the health insurance is better. They're leaving for purposes of pay. So for that reason, we are focused on pay for this study. And I completely respect what you're saying in terms of total rewards, but we're not hearing that people are leaving because the total rewards are more valuable with our competitors.
Well, then maybe there needs to be adjustments, because this, again, this is supposed to be, we are supposed to be looking towards a sustainable budget. We have a sustainable budget task force. We're talking about overrides, and you know, looking at these type of compensation studies in a vacuum without looking at the bigger whole picture and weighing in all of these other whether they're compensation to an employee, there are costs to a town, there are costs to a resident, there are taxpayer dollars. So again, you know, I find this study to be really lacking in information enough for me to embrace it.
So where the study is lacking, we have examined that through the budgetary process. So we understand how much the benefits cost and the value that they bring. So I apologize, I don't see where the vacuum is.
Well, has the Sustainable Budget Task Force that is looking at the 5-year budget taken into account the compensation study with these 65%? I mean, it just seems like we're a bit disconnected.
So as
Just-
Rainey established, we're focused on 60th percentile. We wanted to see how much 65th would cost, but we're focused on 60th percentile.
Just the Sustainable Budget Task Force, all we've achieved so far is to look at revenue side. All right, and then the department heads have basically built a balanced budget and a a needs budget, which we need to look at some point in
Right.
time. But that's the job that took place 3 months ago. So
I have a question while Ms. Yee is still here, as well as this 35% spread. Why is that recommended? It seems to be quite a number.
What? Oh.
all grades have a 35% spread.
So what that means, what that means is the difference between the minimum of the salary range and a maximum of the salary range. Currently, the Duxbury salary ranges are around 35%, so we went with the similar spread. Normally, when we're making a recommendation, we recommend either a 35 or a 40% range spread. So this is consistent with what we recommend in other communities.
And you represent, well, obviously, so how is that recommended when you have a 2.5 increase every year in most communities unless they do overrides? How do you have such a spread like that with the potential for it going up?
Can
I need to
I guess I'm
understand.
totally not understanding the
Yeah.
question.
Well,
We
you're
recommend as part of implementation that communities do look at their ranges each year and that they can survey their comparable communities and find out what they're moving their salary ranges, and that the salary ranges would probably move each year as well, depending upon the market. So say, for example, you survey your comparable communities and they're all doing a 3% cost of living and you do a 3% cost of living. We typically recommend that you would move your ranges at some level as well.
okay.
Right, maybe the question is,
Clean up my question.
clean up the question. In your sustainable budget that you put together, Rennie, did you include a 60 percentile budget estimate? Did you include the compensation study results in the
We're working
sustainable
through that
budget?
now, but we're using the 60th percentile, yes.
So you have it already included in the,
I said we're working through it now, but that's the percentile we're using, is the 60th.
okay, so the balanced budget, sorry, in other words, it's sustainable. The balanced budget that was presented,
Yeah, that's
did it
different.
include the results of this work?
I don't believe it did, no.
So basically, the balanced budget was based on 2024 salaries, is not based on the Article 4 that's going to be there at the
It would've been
ATM.
Based on 25 salaries.
25 salaries, yes.
That is the reason for my.
That's Amy's
the
question.
Disconnection. We're not looking
the
at the whole
question?
picture.
So the question is basically, we have
Disconnect.
this, and it hasn't been plugged in. This data, this information has not been plugged into the balanced budget.
Nor will it be. It's going to be part of the contingency budget. This isn't part of the balanced budget at all. Never would be. Never was proposed. This is a contingency. There are 3 components to it. The option 2 budget is the first phase. The second phase is the compensation classification part, and then the third component are the collective bargaining agreements, trying to figure out what that dollar amount should be as well. Those are the 3 components to the contingency budget.
So the balanced budget,
Balanced budget does not contain.
that's your first article, Article 5, balanced budget. Basically, you've got 2025 salaries in there. The same for the schools?
Do you remember, Danielle? For your balanced budget, your option 1, did your salaries remain flat?
We have a collective bargaining agreement in place.
But for your non-collective,
What you could speak about in public.
yes.
Hello, Danielle Klingerman. Question about our not our real needs, our level funded up to 2.5 budget. Have we taken in salary increases into consideration? Yes. In our real needs budget, we had put a recommendation for a market adjustment for Unit A over the course of the next collective bargaining agreement, but none of those, all of the collective bargaining increases that are part of the contracts were factored into our
Right.
level funded up to 2.5. But we aren't part of any of this proposed
No.
market
This is
analysis.
not-
I
this is-
understand.
Yeah, okay,
But
got it.
While you're still up there, though.
Oh, hello.
It
We'll
does
stay
seem
on
like
this.
you're looking at it more globally. You're looking at, when you're looking at your budget, you're not just you're looking at your salaries and your increases as well. And that's where I'm feeling that we aren't following suit. We are disconnected in this regard.
I'll table that for 1 second,
Yeah.
and I'll let Jeannie respond. But did you do a similar compensation study?
We did a market analysis in 2023.
Okay. And did you use the same company?
Nope, we used AIM HR.
What's that?
AIM HR.
Okay. Did you use the same towns?
We have a different, we can use comparable school districts called our DART districts. So we also used some regional comparisons as well as our DART districts because we are
Right.
drawing from the same region.
Right.
Right.
But we have comparable districts across the Commonwealth.
Okay.
And I will say, in support of what Jeannie said, the job market is really challenging out there. And so when you're looking to hire candidates, you want to make sure that you're offering a competitive salary because we tell them every time we interview them, we have a very strong benefits package here in Duxbury, but it really does come down to the salary being within the range that the employees are expecting. And so by having that range, if you have someone with less experience coming in, you can hire at a lower range. And if you have someone extremely experienced coming in, it gives you a little more flex. We find that people aren't willing to take $10,000 less but to come to our community if they're coming in with an expectation of a salary. And even if we tell them a range, they always know that they can negotiate at the end. And so there are times when we can't come to a mutually agreeable number because of their expectation of salary. So we've faced similar situations where we've lost candidates to other communities
Because of pay.
because of
Salary.
pay.
But certainly not every community is the same, and
Right.
there's some communities are able to pay more because there's more challenges to the job.
Well, it's also based on the ability to pay.
Yeah. I mean, even on our the town side. I mean,
Yeah.
the Plymouth example.
Yeah, I think all of the anytime you're looking at these positions, there's similar challenges in each position.
Yeah.
So we have our challenges here as well, but it is overall a wonderful place to work.
I was
would
going to
agree.
say it's a pretty excellent school system.
It
So.
is.
Thank you.
Yeah.
May I make an inquiry regarding the grades, please, since we're on grades, not school grades. So this goes to Katie. When I'm looking at the Table 1, the comprehensive table of the draft classification and comp report, and the new grades, so they go from, I don't know, 12 to 15 or so on one of the pages. My question is this. There are not only spreads within positions themselves, but there are also significant differences in ranges between positions in the same grade, the same new grade. So I'll give you an example. Under grade 13, a fire captain / paramedic grade 13, the spread is between 99,000 and 106,000. But also in that same grade, grade 13, there is a police lieutenant between 119,000 and 125,000. And what I'm trying to wrap my head around is what is the distinction between and among the grades if the pay ranges or the pay bands within those grades are potentially, well, in this case, significantly different from one another.
So would you like me to stop the presentation part and jump to the table so I can explain the table? Because I think it would help if I could show you and explain it a little bit.
Well, you don't have to derail it on my part. We can
Finish the presentation.
Yeah, you can finish.
A couple slides left.
There's only a couple of
Okay,
slides, right?
'cause
All right, that's fine.
I can explain the different columns
All right,
when we
that's
get to
good.
the table. And I just have a couple more slides, and I can whip through them really quick if you would like.
Yep.
So proposed implementation, when it comes time to implement our recommendations, we really only have a handful of suggestions when communities are going through the implementation process. The first is that if any employee's compensation is currently below what the recommended minimum of the salary range is, we would suggest that that employee be raised to the minimum as soon as possible. The reason being that means that that employee is probably being paid below the market rate, and so it would be, advantageous to adjust that employee's salary as soon as possible. If an employee is paid within the proposed range, then, quite honestly, they're within the market and they really don't have to receive any type of adjustment. However, a lot of communities do like to have implementation adjustments at the time that they put the study into place. Again, that's something that each community considers and handles differently. If an employee's pay is above the maximum of the range, then we often say that, you know, they should probably, their salary should kind of be held there until the range catches up. And there's different ways that you can look at still compensating that employee through lump sum increases or bonuses or something like that, if, you know, you don't want to completely freeze that employee's salary.
This proposal.
Again, future administration, we always suggest that you review, you know, what your comparable communities are doing so that it gives you an idea of what the market is doing, and then possibly consider adjusting your pay ranges or use that information to make recommendations around what your future increases might look like. I want to add just one more comment on the benefits discussion, because we do quite a few of these surveys and processes in various states. And a lot of times what we find when we're doing a benefits analysis is that public sector communities, they're all very generous in their benefits packages. There really isn't any community that I've worked with that has not been generous. You know, we see a lot of flexible time off, PTO, holidays, significant number of holidays, generous in the employer portion of insurance premiums. So, you know, we do a lot of that with communities, and we do look at benefits, but a lot of times, kind of even going back to what Jeannie said, it boils down to the salary and what the next community is paying. Because in the public sector, benefits do tend to be quite generous. And so that is the end of the slide presentation. So I can end this, and I can bring up the tables so that you can see the tables.
When we answer Brian's question, I want to understand the next steps for this proposed implementation.
Just going to let Brian finish his thought, because he...
Yes, that's why I think Katie's going to take us through the table.
Yep.
So there's two tables in the report, Table 1 and Table 2. Table 1 is what we refer to as the comprehensive table, and this one really has a lot of information in it. And so I think what you were looking at is up here, salary grade 13.
Right.
And so obviously the first column is position title, the second column is their current salary grade, the next one is proposed grade. Now what we have here where it says 60th percentile survey data and 65th percentile survey data, this is the data that we collected through the market survey process. These are not necessarily the proposed ranges. This is the data that we use to make a proposed range or to come up with a proposed range. And the reason that the classification component of the study is so important is because, kind of going back to the initial slide, it creates that internal structure or that internal equity for you. And so this grouping of positions are all leveled within that structure at a level 15. This is all of their pay data from the market survey at the 60th percentile, and then this next column is their market data at the 65th percentile. What we do is we take kind of an average of that data, and then an average of the data in 14, and an average of the data in 13, and so on and so forth, and we come up with these proposed ranges over here at the far right. So again, this would be a proposed range if you wanted to be at the 60th percentile, and a proposed range if you wanted to be at the 65th percentile. So these are actually the proposed ranges for all of the positions within that particular grade or that particular bucket. And how that works is that, you know, that internal structure is your internal equity or your internal structure, and then you're saying then that like positions are being compensated similarly, and that's where that pay range comes in, by taking an average of all that kind of market data and coming up with a proposed range to match that market data. Now, again, what I hear you saying is that you're really going to stick with the 60th percentile, but for purpose of this study, we did take a look at 65th, just to give you an idea of what that might look like. So as you go through Table 1, we have all the different grades here, and again, all that different market data, and we really collected a lot of market data for this study, so you know, again, kudos to the HR team for helping us with that process. And then when you get to Table 2, this is just a very streamlined version of showing you what the proposed grades look like just all on one page. We've got grades 1 through 15. We've got them grouped into different bands based on what we saw in the market. We have an administrative technical band, we have a managerial supervisor band, and then we have a director and senior leadership band. Again, we've got the 35% range spread, and then the difference from one grade to the next is called gradation. So for this first grouping, we had a 5% gradation, second grouping a 5% gradation, and then for the last grouping, we have a 12% gradation. But that's just a quick overview of this table. What other questions do you have on it? Because it really is a lot of data.
No, that was it. That was very helpful. So now I understand Table 1 is basically the inputs, Table 2 is the output, right?
Yeah. Can I just go back?
Yes, and all that survey data, if you have a copy of the draft report, at the back of the draft report, there's an appendix that has all the detailed survey data in it. This is just where we pulled over the 60th and the 65th percentile of that data.
Thank you.
Can we just go back? Yeah, perfect. A question, I just want to understand. So if you look at the current grade of 14, right? So right now, the pay range is 102 to 143. What's being proposed at the 60th percentile compared to the market, it'll go from 102, it'll go to 106,000 or 107,000, with a maximum range from going from 143,000 to 144,000, another $1,000. That's the impact of the market study. Is that our understanding?
Yeah, you're understanding that correctly. So that's where I said kind of like good news out of the analysis of this study is that, in many situations, the town really has kept pace with that 60th percentile that you went with several years ago when you went and did the study. So for you to look at, going to a lower percentile would, almost a little bit be counterintuitive because you're already at kind of that 60th percentile.
So yeah, you're at the current salary ranges based on last year. Okay.
Go ahead, Amy.
Okay.
May I touch on a subject that I don't know whether we skimmed over or I was struggling with my back. The open range merit plan recommendation to allow for kind of a no ceiling for merit increases. Can we talk about that?
No, that's actually not, so an open range
That's not
plan
no longer in the study?
Just means that you have a minimum and a maximum, and that employees move through the minimum and move from the minimum to the maximum based on whatever system you currently have in place. That might be a merit program, that might be a cost of living program. It really depends on what you have in place. We typically recommend an open range system. However, a lot of communities have collective bargaining agreements, they have step systems, and so that's not always possible with, upon implementation. But it wouldn't be an unlimited movement through the range. It would be based on, whatever your merit system is for that year. So if you, decided on or budgeted like a 2% or a 3% merit, then that's what it would be based on. It wouldn't be completely an unlimited merit.
All right, I want to make sure because I find that problematic for a number of reasons. And I know that this board discussed, and there was some side work done on the 3 or the to 5 and what the range and what justified a specific merit increase. I have seen recent tables that show that there were some increases well beyond that, which are concerning. So I think there's a lot to talk about with this, and I guess that goes to where you were going. Where do we
Right.
go from here? Because
Yeah. So there's a proposed implementation. So what are you going to recommend to the select board? That's the proposed, right? That's the draft. What's the plan going forward for this implementation of the? And what oversight will the select board have on that implementation?
Well, I'll answer the first part.
Yep.
The proposal gets folded into the omnibus budget in terms of the contingency budget, so that's where you'll see it.
The thing is that, so, for instance, the first step, employees who present compensation below the minimum compensation, the range for their classification should be raised to the minimum range, right? So we'll have a pool, right? The budget, the override budget, or whatever budget is going to have a pool, 3 or 4% pay rise, or that's how much money is available. So when you have people there that have a lot of people that are need to move up, you'll swallow up. If you do it one fell swoop, there won't be any money left over for everybody else, right? So that's what I want to understand is basically how many employees we've got, how many employees need to move up, how many employees are in there, how many employees are lump sum. So how are we going to distribute the pool in an open and transparent manner? That's my question.
All right, we'll get that information to you.
I think we'd like to take, I personally would like to take a look at how that gets done.
I think it's incredibly important to make sure that we distribute the monies that the taxpayers are generously providing equally and fairly. And I think, there's concern that and we maybe don't have oversight over that. And maybe that's something that we need to talk about having, because I think it's incredibly important for all kinds of reasons to have that equity and fairness across the board.
Not to
I thought there was going to be a response.
not to keep on kicking this. Can I get into one particular position question? And that has to do with the planning director. And I see some opportunity here, number one. We need to hire a planning director, a good one. And where I'm going with this is when we're talking about internal equity and external equity, external being the market survey. This circles back to a question I asked earlier about positions, people applying, understanding what the position really means versus what the job description or what the title itself might be commonly understood to be. So, Jeannie, this might be for you. So I'm glad to see that planning director has moved up or is proposed to be moving up in grade, which would allow it to be better compensated. But how do we communicate to the market, so to speak, the particular needs, the specific needs that Duxbury has that, as we know from sifting through resumes, is rare. Despite lots of talented people out there, we're looking for some very particular things here for Duxbury. How can this study help us? Well, number one, getting the new grade or getting the grade adjusted. But other than that, how do we get the message out saying, hey, take a look at Duxbury if you've thought about it before and passed upon it for whatever reason, come back and have another look if you're talented and want to put in the time. How do we use this as a tool to help us achieve that goal? I'm using that as an example, that particular position.
Great question. So the first thing we do after every town meeting is examine our open positions. So we look at those open positions for the reasons that you're asking, to make sure that at the earliest opportunity, we can repost those jobs with the new pay ranges. So the position that you're speaking about, planning director in particular, we posted that as soon as humanly possible at the new salary range, repackaged it, refreshed it, and reposted it. So all of our job postings include the full job description. So it's abundantly clear what is required of the applicant. So it's on our applicant tracking system. It's on our town website. It hits over 100 job postings electronically. We post it on the Massachusetts Municipal Administration job board, and then we post it on all of the unique job sites for individuals who have these kinds of skills, including colleges and universities that carry this major and graduate individuals with the kind of credentials that we need for this job.
Okay, and in our study, and this might be a Katie question, we're pretty confident that a planning director at grade 13 is where that position ought to be for the services we're expecting from that person?
Well, interestingly enough, as I'm looking at the survey data at the 60th and the 65th percentile, it almost fits perfectly with the proposed range. So I think that one looks very good in the structure that we've created. And with the title of director, I think it makes sense that it moved up a grade as well.
So the existing salary range is 80 to 113, and is now 95 to 128, which compares pretty well with the 60th percentile, which is 96.7 and 127.
Yep. Yep. They were made for each other.
Thank you.
I just, when this study was done and presented to the staff, what process did the town provide to allow employees to challenge this? Or I'll start with that.
Thank you for that question. So as Katie probably has experienced, the town of Duxbury is unique in our approach to these kinds of projects and efforts. It is so important to engage the employees in this process, to get their feedback, to get their participation, so that everyone can understand what the project is and what the goals of the project are. Mm-hmm. So employees were engaged in the process from the beginning, and it was something that they were accustomed to from the previous study. So the employees completed job analysis questionnaires. They updated their job descriptions, and those were then forwarded to their supervisor for agreement and further comment, and then they were forwarded to the Human Resources Department for review, and then we submitted all of that data to GovHR for the 131 positions that were reviewed, and then in addition we did position interviews. So we start with a very educated employee population, and we have a astute employee population as well. So they are very strong partners in this space. So when we made the same presentation to employees last month, employees had the opportunity to participate in a very similar fashion in this very room and wherever they were most comfortable. And then in addition to that, we got feedback on the draft report from department heads first before releasing the draft report to all of you, the finance committee, and the employees all at the same time. And then the last time we did the study, I built in a appeal process. So employees have the ability to appeal the results of this study. So today, so all of those appeals were received by December 2nd. So we have reviewed all of the appeals. We have not yet adjudicated those, but we are in the process of doing that. So we received 24 appeals, but not all of them were necessarily involved like a grade change. You know, one question, for example, was the study included fiscal year 25 data. How are you going to utilize that data in fiscal year 26? You're already going to be behind. And we've already thought of that. So the answer to that person will be, we've aged the data by 2%, which is what our competitive set communities expect to provide to their employees in fiscal year 26. So they're very specific questions that speak to their understanding of the process.
Yeah.
Is that so in that appeals process, is it first to their supervisor, then to human resources, and then the town manager?
Yes.
How does that work?
Yes. So we use the same process with the appeals. So the employee completes the appeal form that's standardized. They detail, you know, which appeal bucket it falls into. Then they substantiate the information. They provide additional documentation. Then that appeal went to the supervisor and the department head, and both had to sign off. So the employee, the supervisor, and the department head signed off on the appeal, and then they were submitted to the town manager, or actually they were submitted to human resources, and then the town manager, myself, the assistant HR director, the HR manager, and the finance director, along with GovHR, reviewed all of the appeals. And then we have some follow-up questions, so we'll be following through on those questions in the coming weeks.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think this whole compensation classification study, I'm glad we did it 3 years ago, and I'm glad we're doing it again. A good example is the planning director. We haven't been able to fill that slot we've been trying to fill it, and the pay range was obviously not sufficient to attract somebody to come here. So I'm glad that the compensation study has reflected that. I think we just got to be, I like the transparency, everybody sees it. And I think the next step to ensure that continued transparency is let's have a look at how it's implemented.
Yeah.
To make sure that that we continue doing this the right way. I think it's a good thing. It's our only way to feel comfortable that we are paying a competitive salary for the jobs that our employees do here in the town. So, and then we can demonstrate that to the residents that people are being paid fairly for their jobs. So I think it's good that we're doing it. And like I reiterate, let's just continue the transparency with how we implement it.
A question. In the charts here, there are quite a few positions that are labeled new. And I assume those have all been, you know, requested by various departments or whatever. How are those going to, as this sort of for Rainey, I think, I don't know, maybe for Jeannie, how are those going to be plugged in or not, I guess, to the...
They first start out in Article 4. If the position is going to be advanced any further, then it lands in Article 4, and the new position sits there the way it usually does. And there's a funding source for that. Then in Article 5, what would be 5B, which would be the contingency budget, it would be added into the departmental line item for whatever the specific position is, if in fact it moves forward. Some aren't. We did the whole. We were putting in all kinds of things at the beginning, because like I had told you folks probably, I don't know, 2 years ago, I had a list of like 21 positions that people wanted. So we were just putting them all in there to see where they fell. Some survived, some didn't. Some will move forward, some won't.
And how are you going to determine how things move forward?
Conversation with the department heads.
Okay.
What the real need is. It's got to be sustainable. It's also got to be a real need.
Yeah.
In fact, I mean, that's going to be, actually, that's a nice segue to the next topic of conversation.
I could ask one
Cindy,
more
I'm going to cut
question.
to the chase for you. There's an assistant planner, environmental director position in there that would handle coastal resiliency.
What was the reason that the compensation study included the town clerk, where she's an elected official, and she isn't under she shouldn't be a part of this study. Her salary is set by the town meeting.
And the question would become, how would the town meeting know how to set the salary? So the idea is that we are implementing a compensation system. This is not a compensation for individuals. So the reason why we included so many new positions in the study of our compensation system is because, and the reason why we include all of the collective bargaining positions is because we need to understand how our 10 compensation systems, not even including elected officials, interact together. Because if we don't understand how they interact together, we can't control the spend, we can't understand the spend, we will create a dissatisfying work environment. And the state of Massachusetts, under the Equal Pay Act, actually requires us to examine all of our positions to provide relatively equal pay for relatively equal work. And this is the best way to do it. So there's an art and a science to it, but in my view, it is best to put all of the compensation into one study. And then you're absolutely right, the town clerk's study is determined by town meeting. But the town clerk, if we don't include that that position's pay in the study, there's no way to make sure that that pay is competitive, and that pay can very easily fall behind. And that's what some of the analysis that I do in order to implement the study ensures that that doesn't happen. So I think it's important to look at everybody through the same lens, and then we have our different uniquenesses to those individual positions, but at least we've examined them all with the same process.
I have nothing. Anybody else have any questions?
No?
No.
No.
Members of the public, Mike?
Yes, members of the public. And we do have a couple more extensive items, so if you'd like to save your... we can certainly take an email. All right, thank you. We'll move...
Thank you, Jeannie. And thank you, Kate.
Thank you, both of you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right.
For motion?
We have to enter as Water and Sewer Commissioners, please.
I move that the Select Board adjourn the meeting in order to meet as the Water and Sewer Commissioners with the intent of reconvening as the Select Board afterward. Requires a roll call.
Second.
Fernando, aye.
Cindy, aye.
Amy, aye.
Michael, aye.
Brian, aye.
Thank you for the point.
Right.
Did you kick them?
She did.
All right, so we've kicked around this a little bit. Brian, do you want to jump in here because you did these edits?
Well, might have Randy and Jeff speak to it, because it's lots of different folks have touched it.
Okay.
I was kind of just the
All right, so what do we have here?
scrivener, so go ahead.
Go ahead, Rain.
All right. Well, the edits are, this is wound up a lot differently than it started. By the way, you have the most recent one that I emailed you on Friday, right?
Yep.
The one in the packet.
Yeah.
It started out as a couple paragraphs, and we're a little bit beyond that now. We're into a couple pages. We took a look at the changes that Brian had made and made sure that they were viable and legal. They all were. You made the changes. I figured you might want to.
Well, no, I mean, I wanted something simple, and it got a lot more complicated.
Not
Now we're-
simple,
We're
Brian?
kind of back to simple again, so
Yeah.
we've kind of come all the way around the horn. So the idea here is that effective as of this regulation, so if we vote on it today, effective
Yep.
as of today, you can still have an underground irrigation system, but you can't connect to town water if it's new.
It's new.
So if you've got one already, you can keep it.
Yep.
If you make it any bigger, you got to disconnect from town water and dig your own well. The point here is that Duxbury for many years, whether you agree or disagree with DEP, they issue a water withdrawal permit to all the communities,
Yep.
including Duxbury, and they push us to withdraw not more than, and Mark, you can correct me if I'm wrong, I think it's 65 gallons
Yep.
per person per day. And we're well over that based upon our summer use. So in order to attempt to get in better compliance with the state, the DEP recommends a number of different things, one of which is a regulation like this, where you prohibit new systems from connecting to the municipal source. Now, there have been arguments to say, well, you're all tapping into the same aquifer, but what
Right.
difference does it make? The answer to that is, yes, we're taking it from the same aquifer, but from the town's perspective, we don't then have to treat that water. Everything that comes through your pipe is drinkable, and you don't necessarily need that to irrigate your grass. So what this regulation does is, going forward prospectively, prohibits new systems from connecting to town water, requires systems that are expanded, existing systems that are expanded, to disconnect from town water and connect to a well, allows existing systems to continue as they are, connected to town water, but you have to install a moisture sensor.
Yep.
And I understand we're required to put a date certain on that. So April Fool's Day, April 1st, 2025 was the date selected. There are no sensor requirements on wells. And Jeff Chandler made a good point early on that, again, if we're looking to protect the source, why shouldn't we have sensors on everything so you don't have to water when it's raining? We were advised by council that we are not authorized to regulate water from private wells. So that's why we're not including a sensor requirement for private irrigation systems. That's pretty much it. So it applies to all irrigation systems in town, but the applicability is, and I'll say it, I guess one more time just to be clear, existing systems you can keep. If you change it and make it bigger, you need to connect to a well.
Yeah.
If you don't have a system currently and you want one, you can do it, but you have to put in a well. And those who have existing systems who don't already have a rain sensor or a moisture sensor, and you're on town water, you need to install that by April 1st, 2025.
Wait, yeah, hold on a sec. Let's be clear on that one, right? Because I have a rain sensor on my system.
Mm-hmm.
So is that enough, or should be connected to an operational moisture sensor or similar climate-related technology? Is a rain sensor defined under similar climate-related technology?
Yes.
Okay.
You're already compliant, Fernando.
Hey,
Congratulations.
good to know.
And I assume Mark's going to be crawling around in people's yards to find out if they have rain sensors, right?
Well, actually, Brian's pretty familiar with this stuff now. We're going to send him out.
In all seriousness, what's the real reality of enforcement on this? Like, what kind of enforcement can be done?
No,
Yes, sir.
come on, let's not be, they are on this.
I know,
They
but I
are-
don't want to put, our
Mark
water
Lott,
department
and
in.
Sewer Superintendent. It's going to be very difficult to enforce the rain sensor part. It's going to be more of an honor system. I will have a lot more ability to enforce the installation of new systems. When they come forward for a building permit, I'll be able to note that irrigation will not be allowed to be installed.
And I know we lost our Board of Health person. Is there a thought on this if someone in good faith applies for a well and it's rejected for any number of reasons? Is there a thought that people might be able to, there would be an exception to this? I don't, do other towns have that exception if they're unable to do a well?
I'm not sure about that. I don't think so.
I've never heard of it.
I'm not sure why you wouldn't be able to do a well. It's not potable water, so I'm not
Yeah.
sure what the setback is to somebody's septic
I
system.
know people have had
Probably
trouble
not
finding
much.
water in various places, and then the setback becomes an issue. They have to ask for
Yeah.
exceptions from
Keene Street.
the Board of Health.
600 feet, they never found it.
Yeah, I watched a person go through it 3 times with,
Mile away.
so,
Why don't we just apply it and then see what happens?
that's, the other,
The point, just the point on this, is to, again, why we're doing this at all,
Yeah.
is to better comply with our water withdrawal permit restrictions.
Correct.
And where, despite the town's best efforts on the voluntary and mandatory outdoor watering restrictions, which, by the way, are still applicable, this is in addition to, not in place of, that it demonstrates to the Commonwealth that we're undertaking all reasonable steps to better comply with the numbers that they're requiring us to comply with.
You know, this
Right,
is
Mark?
almost analogous to the speed limit.
yeah, well,
Put a speed limit of 30 miles an hour, and some people obey it and some don't, and this is the same thing.
well.
Sorry, am I being
No,
maybe a bit too cynical?
You know,
but-
I think
but-
there's another upside here, and it's a sneak preview to all the work Fernando and
Yeah.
the water group has been
Yeah,
working
Water
on.
Advisory Board, yeah, and...
You know, we're talking about recommendations in the millions
Yep.
for updating pipes to water lawns.
Yeah,
You know, and
yeah.
that's you know, it's a big investment for our taxpayers for not drinking water.
yeah, agreed.
And so I think there is, you know, some value to this
Oh, yeah.
on that end.
And the water rate study will help that one as well.
Definitely help. There might be other folks who voluntarily want to get
Yeah.
onto a well for that
Exactly.
purpose. Might be
Yeah.
more expensive to use municipal water.
Yep.
I forwarded, I thought you, Brian, but the Mass General Law states public and private supplies have to have interruption devices. Maybe you didn't know it, everybody got it, I saw it last
An
week and I
interruption
forwarded it.
device?
This Mass General Law,
Rain.
the whole thing, Part 1, Title 2, Chapter 21, Section 67.
What's that, sorry, what's that
So go
relevant to?
It says public or private water supply systems have to have, are required to have interruption devices, which is the moisture and or rain sensor.
That's, we had council look at it, and they said we couldn't,
I'm just saying what the
couldn't
Mass General Law says.
require that on wells.
Private well,
I mean, I got it right here, so what?
I told them Jeff really wanted it, and they said,
Didn't make any
even though Jeff
difference.
wants it, yeah.
I just happened to find that in the Mass General laws, and maybe council's not aware of it. I think it might be worth looking into, just because it does, it's chapter and verse, that's all I'm telling you.
Okay.
Well, isn't that what we're putting in when we're saying all grandfathered systems
yeah, we are.
shall be connected to an operational moisture sensor or similar climate-related control technology?
It's the new systems that
Right.
Jeff is
It
talking
says
about.
newly installed or renovated irrigation
Newly
system.
Oh,
installed.
newly,
It's
so they don't
newly.
need those?
No, that's
Oh,
what
I understand.
Brian
So we
said,
heard from
council.
Yep.
Council said you can't regulate private stuff
Right.
But we're saying grandfathered systems need them.
because they're connected to the town water system.
Right.
Got it.
Okay.
Mrs. Babcock.
Sorry.
I'm just going by what
Yep.
the state mandated.
Yep.
Go ahead, Alicia.
Okay, thank you.
You have to go by
Brian
council.
just touched a few minutes ago on my question, actually, as far as residents voluntarily wanting to change over to a well. And I was just wondering if the board has considered offering any kind of an incentive to residents that want to do that, because there is an expense involved, of course, and the benefit to the town is pretty great. So would you consider doing anything like that? Thank you.
I would volunteer to send a thank you note.
Yeah.
Alicia, I think it's a great idea. I've been trying to brainstorm incentives, incentivizing all kinds of, green landscapes and that kind of thing. But I think what the water department is doing with their, for the least amount of water that we use, you pay the least amount per gallon. So I think that in and of itself is incentivizing using less water. But I'm open to, I think that I would love to see us find more ways to incentivize.
I'll put Mark on the spot. We're not aware of like any grant programs or anything from the state that would,
No,
For
but I
digging
think
wells?
the new rate study is going to be a big incentive to use well
Yeah.
water irrigation as opposed to paying a very large water bill.
right.
5-minute showers.
So, Alicia, I think the there's lots of pressures on the residents, and anyway, yeah, it'll be tough for the town, i.e. the taxpayers, to give people an incentive that way, right? Because it's all coming out of our pockets to incentivize.
Of course.
Yeah.
We're obviously not the only town that's dealing with PFAS issues and expensive filters that we need. So I haven't looked into it myself, but is there a possibility that there may be some sort of state money available for that sort of thing?
Yeah. It's not that we're aware, unfortunately. Oh, and one thing I neglected to mention, this applies to systems outside of Duxbury that are on Duxbury water, so Green Lawns and Marshfield.
Right.
Will be.
Okay, can we go ahead and vote on this?
Yeah,
We can.
it's a good idea.
So why don't I move the Select Board adopt the underground irrigation system regulations as presented. And as presented means the version that Rainey submitted to
Right.
us
The
separately.
red line one.
Yeah.
Red line one, yep.
And it
Second.
requires a roll call vote.
Second.
Fernando, aye.
Cindy, aye.
Amy, aye.
Michael, aye.
Brian, aye. I'd like to thank Jeff Chandler for all his hard work on this. He's been probably the most engaged of all our citizens on this particular issue, and I appreciate all the time and effort he put into it.
Thank you, Jeff.
Thank
And
you, Jeff.
unfortunately, we have to listen to council.
I know, I didn't understand how we can I don't know how to put it, not live up to what the state mandates, we're actually going below what the state mandates. So.
Right.
Yep.
Well, if we can convince our legal counsel, we can always bring it back.
Yep.
So, all right.
Oh, so I need to
We have to
move,
get out of that. We take our water commissioner hat off.
I move that the Water and Sewer Commissioners adjourn their meeting and reconvene as a Select Board. Requires a roll call.
We saved the best bit for last.
Second. I know, really.
Second, Fernando, aye.
Cindy, aye.
Amy, aye.
Michael, aye.
Brian, aye.
It's getting 8:45.
You forgot your name.
I know.
Getting so late.
It's getting so late.
All right. So now we're having a
Thanks, Mark.
discussion pertaining to the inclusion of an override warrant article and associated ballot question. Mr. Reed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. At your last meeting, as you know, we all had a discussion with respect to the my proposed FY26 budget, which was a bleak scenario. And as a result of that, there was much conversation over an override and the potential for it. Preparing for an override is a multifaceted process, as many of you probably know. In this case, we have the option one budget, which is balanced, but it's balanced on the backs of a number of employees and other cuts to be made. So what I'm in the process of doing is preparing two articles. The first is what I'll call Article 5A, which is the option one budget or the non-override budget. And the second is Article 5B, which is the contingency budget, which will be the override budget ultimately. We're in the midst of doing the calculations for the costs of the compensation classification study, as you heard earlier. We're also looking at the calculation of the collective bargaining agreements and what those costs might be, because those two components together are what make the budget sustainable. It isn't just the dollar amount for 1 year. It's being able to afford to pay people where they should be and what they bargained for. And with that, what we're doing is Mary and I have been reviewing the option two contingency budget. We are refining and clarifying those numbers. We're looking at the costs of reinstating the positions. We're looking at the costs for some of the new positions, not all. And we're looking at the proposed expenses. We're doing refinement with that as well. We want to make sure that each request is what we're using as a term right-sized to be sustainable for future years. We don't want to overload one expense line for another. We want to make sure that it's still well, to use the word again, that it is sustainable for whatever department we're speaking of. In the case of the DPW or the facilities department, they have needs that have been unseen for decades. And so we need to make sure that we've got the appropriate amount of money in there to be able to handle future years, because this is not an exercise that we want to go through on an annual basis. My target date originally for having the contingency budget number was going to be this Thursday, but that would be without the compensation and classification figures, and it would also be without the collective bargaining costs. What I need to happen in between getting the real numbers out is the Sustainable Budget Task Force, as Fernando mentioned about an hour ago. I need to have their recommendation to see that what I'm trying to put together is aligned with their goal in terms of not just for today, but for the sustainable future. So they probably won't be able to meet until after the first of the year. So like I said, we're getting the first blush at the option 2 budget, 5B. We've already got the question crafted. We have the layout. Mary and I went over the proposed layout for the omnibus for both the for both Article 5A and 5B to make sure that we were going to have the correct mechanics to get us through the process so that we can deliver the question so that everybody understands what it is we're doing. So that's
Yeah.
kind of where we are.
Okay, Rennie, can I just, let me see here.
I want to say one more thing.
Oh,
Just
yeah,
here,
yeah.
If people are looking for information, because I know that there's been some talk about that, being able to find things. If people go on the Town of Duxbury's website, particularly the Finance Department, if you click on the Finance Department page, you will find a tremendous amount of information there. You'll find the work that's been done by the Sustainable Budget Task Force. You'll find any of the presentations that have been provided to this board or anybody else. You will find, I think also, Mary, the option 1 budget is up there. You'll also find a number of links to the DOR to see how overrides work, so everybody can be kind of becoming familiar with the nomenclature and the specifics of how the process works. Because if you've never been through one, it's a different thing. It's new, and it can be challenging trying to figure it all out. But Mary and I are always available to help anybody answer any questions the best we can, yourselves included, of course.
Rennie,
Yeah.
so the whole process going forward, right? So an override, the last time we had an override was
36 years ago.
36 years ago, right? And I'm just concerned if the Sustainable Budget Task Force, right, meets and then puts together what Article 5A is like. 5B, sorry,
Yep,
5,
okay.
sorry.
Don't worry.
5B is like. I'm concerned about that, right? Right now, my sense is that in the community, there's a lot of anger, there's a lot of concern, there's a lot of fear. This is a big deal, and I'm concerned that if the Sustainable Budget Task Force meets in this room here, only 5 or 6 people and comes up with 5B, I don't feel that that's the right way to get it done. I would like to have an open meetings, and anybody
Sure.
can come along and chat and bring their concerns. I would like some way of having open meetings where we meet as a select board, as a finance committee, and I'm sure the school committee would like to be there, and to have a conversation around what does a sustainable budget look like, that what is it we're going to put together for the community here at the annual town meeting, right? So answer the question is basically, yeah, we'll be putting 5B, that's only for 2026, but actually an override that will be sustainable. We don't want to be doing this every year or plan enough for 5B and then we come back next year and we don't have enough in there. So it has to be a sustainable budget. What does it look like? What's the impact on the taxpayer? There's different options. There's the needs. If we go less, we just need to have it all open and have a great conversation with everybody.
Thank you. And all of those conversations will happen, but the reason I need the Sustainable Budget Task Force and why I appointed you to it is because I need to have a focus on what sustainable is. And that's what the task force was charged with. Tell me what sustainable means. And then at that point, we can put together a budget that can be reacted to by all those groups. And that's exactly what we intend to do.
I don't think we need to define the sustainable.
Really? Watch this. You want a $5 million override, or do you want an $8 million override? $5 million will get you
I don't
1
want
year.
an override at
8
all,
will
but
get
it
you
looks
3.
like we're headed in
That's
that.
why I need to have a conversation with the Sustainable Budget Task Force. It's important to have that conversation first.
Yeah, okay. But building on Amy's comment, right? So the 5A, the balanced budget right now.
Yes.
It basically, the select board and the school committee, I think we need another conversation around that because as a select board, remember COVID times, we said our priorities were public safety, fire, police, DPW, and the schools. So if we're going to do a balanced budget, again, this is one complete transparency, what a real balanced budget looks like and what an override looks like, 5A and 5B, with implications on everything, right? What does 5A really look like? We may not be actually taking over the beach lease. If we're losing money, why are we spending $1 million or we're net $200,000 or $300,000 we're losing operating the beach? Hate to say it, but the library, the Council on Aging, recreation, surely those things we got to look at first before we start cutting firemen, policemen, and teachers, all right? So I think we need to also, in the conversation, what does a real balanced budget look like? Not we made a first pass at it, but I think as a select board and as a committees, we need to look at it and make sure that we take those priorities.
Respectfully, we've done that. That's what you saw on Monday.
There's been no reduction at all in looking at Council on Aging. In personnel, there's been no reduction in personnel for the library.
There was no place to cut because 6 of those positions, there's only 6 positions that could actually be cut. The remaining were grant funded. We cut everywhere we thought we could cut without having to shut the place down.
I think the select board has a right to take a look at that.
You do.
I would really like to
But
look at that again.
The process is, I present to you a balanced budget. It's been presented. It's not one, as I said at the beginning, that anybody likes.
No, nobody likes it, right? I think, but
you
again,
have
to
to
be
have
fair,
balance. It has to be a balanced budget, has
It
to
has
be
to.
approved at town meeting, otherwise our tax rate will not be
no, yeah, I
certified.
totally agree. So I want people to be able to vote, to understand what they're voting on, right? Do we really, again, the select board, I'd like to be able to recommend, we have to recommend the balanced budget, right? We need to vote on it, this board.
On the
We
article.
have an Article 5A, we haven't voted on it, right? I'd like to be able to stand up there and I said, I've looked at this budget. I've scrubbed it, along with my fellow select board members, and I vote to recommend it. Unfortunately, I'm going to have to recommend it. And I would like to take a look at it and see if there's another way we can get those reductions out there without focusing what it looks like. All right, because having a chance to look at it exclusively on fire and police and the schools. Is there another way we can dice an unfortunate situation out there?
Sure.
So,
Well, as you know, a few years ago, this board said that it was their preference to have the Finance Committee review the budget before you reacted to it. You were very clear on that. And in fact, that's exactly what the Finance Committee has done. They have spent months going through the option 1 and option 2 budget. And I can tell you that it pained them greatly to have to make a motion to approve the option 1 budget. No one wanted to do it.
In all due respect, Rainey, years ago, perhaps before this board, that was the preference. But I remember since the time I came on board, actually having to attend all the Finance Committee meetings, and there have been numerous attempts to try to create a joint kickoff and let's all hear the same information at the same time,
Which we did.
alleviating an amount. So it's not that we've asked that the Finance Committee.
Actually, you were the one who asked for that. You said, you indicated your preference before reacting to anything on the budget that you preferred to have the Finance Committee vote on it first.
On anything on the budget, but I'm not talking about the presentation of the departments to the, we've asked that be combined. We always, if the Finance Committee has a recommendation to be made on something in the budget, we do ask, have they made a recommendation on that? That is common practice.
And they have, and they voted it.
So,
anyway.
Can I just say
still-
something, Ian?
Yeah.
Look, our school superintendent here, another
Yeah.
member of the school committees here, they are well ahead of this. They have voted on a real needs budget. They've been sitting here for 3 hours, and members of our public, our employees, are wondering whether they're going to have a job next year. And I really just want to our next meeting's in 2025. We need to get this number. We need the number. Give the public an idea of what that means to the average taxpayer and just be as clear as possible. And I guess my question for our staff is, when can we have that meeting so we know what that number is? We can explain this to people, our neighbors, our friends, and and have a legitimate discussion about
Again,
it.
I don't-
appreciate what everybody's talking about, having extra meetings and trying to get this.
Why don't we have the number? What is the holdup again? I'm sorry.
I need to know the cost of the compensation classification study. I need to know what the cost
We
of.
just got that tonight,
No,
though,
you
so
didn't.
how
You
could
didn't
that
get
be?
the dollar amount with it. That wasn't free. I mean, there's a dollar figure that goes with that. That you just had the study presented to you, but you did not get any understanding of what those new positions are going to cost, or what the increases for grade changes are going to cost, or COLA. You didn't get any of that. That's the calculation that we're running now. So you need that. You need to have what the cost of potential collective bargaining agreements is going to be, and then you need to have the cost of the refined option 2 budget, the
5B.
5B. Because I'm not going to bring you a presentation for the option B budget that doesn't work. I mean, there are some things in there that aren't necessary and some things that are.
I'm concerned about what Mike said as far as our employees worrying about whether they're going to have jobs come
are
July
too.
1st. And, you know, this conversation, I think it seems maybe clear that we are seriously looking at an override, right?
Oh, yeah, there's no
And-
question.
Which is not what everybody in the town wants, because if you look at social media, which I do try to look at, just to keep an eye on what people are saying, not everybody would agree on an override. But I guess what I'm trying to say is, I think that we don't have the number,
Right, that's correct.
but we have, I think, an intention.
You
To-
drafted the article.
Oh, yeah, I have an article ready to go,
Right, an intention
and a ballot question.
to make a real needs budget so that these employees that are concerned can at least relax into the fact that the select board is working hard to make it so that they will maintain their jobs, so that we will maintain our services. I mean, the things go hand in hand. And so in my mind, I just want to make that clear, from my perspective only, I guess, but I don't, you know, I see what other people here think. I'd like to know that, is that work that you all are doing, that we all are doing, to make this real needs budget is serious, and that we're behind it.
Mm-hmm.
I guess, I mean, I know that we can't vote on it in terms of anything really tonight, because we don't have the numbers.
Right.
But that we're moving forward as fast as we can. And I just want to reassure some of these people that they're not, you know, hopefully not in danger of losing their jobs.
Well, we've been doing the same. We've been telling them that we're doing absolutely everything we can. The vote will ultimately be decided by the voters. I can't predict that, but in terms of what we're doing on our side of the house, and I know that Danielle's doing the same, as is Mary and Jeannie, we are swinging for the fences every time we go out there. We're trying to make sure that it works. We're trying to make sure that if we're going to sell an override, that it is a sustainable override.
Right.
That it isn't for 1 year, that it is something that we can use for a number of years. Because like I said, we don't want to find ourselves in this position on an annual basis.
No,
Can
and
We
I
all
think
knew it was coming.
Yeah.
We all know the reasons are varied.
Can we
Now
get
we're all gonna
clarity?
fix it.
I'm pushing for what is the next steps? What are we going to be doing in January? This is the most important thing we have on our agenda.
I agree.
Is to figure this out.
Yep.
So what I'd like to understand, what is the process going forward for January, February, and March to get to a place where we can understand what we're voting on, both 5A and 5B? What is the process that we can do as a community going forward? That's what I'd like to understand.
Well, we're going to be getting I'm going to be sort of rework. We're going to try and rework the website to make it more user-friendly so that people can get more information about overrides, how they work, all the mechanics, provide as much information about what we've done so far. And then we're going to, as I said, we're going to update the number to the contingency budget. I have to update that figure, and it's based on what? 3 things. The budget itself, the refinement of that, the compensation classification study, and the collective bargaining agreements. Once we have all those 3 pieces together, then we'll be able to have a number. I need to know what the Sustainable Budget Task Force thinks is sustainable. I need
So
them.
again, basically, you're putting it on me and Betsy and Danielle to figure this out and then present it to the town in March?
No, putting it on the entire committee.
A piece.
Yeah, yeah,
Entire
okay, there's,
Yeah.
Yeah.
which entire,
Yes, I am.
there's only 6 people, 8 people in there. Is
that
8
was-
people going to decide?
That was the point. That
No,
was,
seriously,
I
we.
didn't change the charge, Fernando. It stayed the same the entire time. That was always the
No,
charge.
I think we need to, sit again, Rennie, and sit, and how we're going to work on this in a complete, open and transparent manner. Right now, everybody thinks that the Sustainable Budget Task Force does stuff, right? And does stuff, right? And then it's behind closed doors, right? This is a big deal. It needs to be completely open and transparent. We got to warts and all. We got to let it all out.
That's fine. Conceptually, I don't disagree. I just need to figure out a way to do it mechanically.
Okay. So we agreed that we need to do it open, transparent. We need to do it with the select board, finance, and with invited members of the school committee.
Like I said, I
would
just
really
need,
appreciate that.
I understand. Thank you.
Okay.
I just need to figure out how to do it mechanically,
Okay.
and I can assure you it won't happen before the first of the year.
We're not,
Why wouldn't, if the Sustainable Budget Task Force took a first stab at it?
well, no, we can do that. We can do that, but we can
And
do
then-
that and present it to. But the conversation around it needs to take place by these 4 groups, these 3 groups.
And
need to
that,
be
like
there.
I said, that's going to happen. So you've just basically agreed to what I said initially,
Wait,
which
no,
was
no.
you said take a
no,
first
haven't.
stab at it.
Take
No.
a first stab at it and then
See, look, they
present
have-
it
what
and
do
then
you-
have all the conversations.
Can I,
Can we have Mary
Time
come up
out
and
here.
speak here?
what do you actually need from the Sustainable Task Force? Because the schools are done.
A definition
They
of what
did their
sustainable
market.
is. How
Okay.
how sustainable
They're
do
not
you
asking
want it
for
to
a full
be?
budget for you. He's asking for one thing here.
Yeah, I need to know what you want for
Is
sustainable.
it 3 years? Is it 2 years?
It's 5-year outlook.
Okay.
We do a 5-year plan.
If I could just touch on Cindy's
So-
point, because it's valid. I mean, we've got people who are out there concerned, not, our morale is down, our employees. I am super concerned about the taxpayers. The taxpayers, there are people in our community that with a hit with what the schools are looking for and some of the numbers I've seen combined, it is devastating to some of our residents. And we can't look at this in a vacuum. We have to also recognize that we have a $100 million PFAS mitigation. The DPW construction hasn't even hit our tax roll. This is all going to hit, along with water rates going up, to the taxpayer all at once. And we have to let them know that I can't speak for you guys, but I will continue to advocate for them, to try my best to try to keep this override down to as reasonable an amount. Touching on what Cindy said, if you need an answer from me, I don't want this to be the case, but I think we are all learning that there is probably a good reason, a good need, a real possibility that an override is the only answer here, unless we want to really drastically reduce services and change our lifestyle.
And that was explained last Monday.
We're there.
Yeah.
So getting there is super hard for me. So, that's a big step. But I'm also committed to to having some type of a reasonable and sustainable. This is the sustainable and this, it's extremely frustrating to me that we are December. We are not going to be seeing each other till the 25th, till next 2025, and yet we don't have any idea what the override amount is going to be. We seem ill-prepared. We don't have a process going forward. This didn't come out of nowhere. We've been asking for this for the last 2 years, and asking to try to get ahead of this, come up with a process, everybody to get to understand and to help educate the residents. And it is really frustrating to me that fingers are being pointed at us, that we're not being as transparent. I believe that we have always tried our best to be
Correct.
as transparent and on top of this as we can possibly be. And I am sorry that we haven't done a better job.
So I'm looking at the calendar, right? So let's do the process. So we've agreed then the Sustainable Budget Task Force meets first. This is what you're saying,
Yeah.
right? And develops a sustainable, a proposed 5-year plan with an override that makes it sustainable, that we don't, we're not coming back year 2, year 3. At least we can forecast year 5. We've got enough money to go ahead and operate, yeah? So how long will that take?
Well,
So I'm just trying to, again, we need clarity of the process going forward. We need dates. We need to,
I gave you the best I could given today.
so can we not, look, I'm going to be really disappointed if we walk out of here with no idea of how we're going to work this forward. This is the most important thing. It hasn't happened in 36 years. We got an override which has significant impact on the community, and we have no clear plan of how we're going to figure it out and how we're going to vote on it, how we, the select board, ultimately are going to recommend 5A and 5B. We have no process going forward of how we're going to do that.
Actually, we do. I thought I had explained it at the beginning.
No, you haven't.
There'll be 2 articles. One is 5A, which has already been voted by the Finance Committee, was the one I submitted, so that one's in the barn.
Yeah.
And then there's going to be 5B, and I told you, there's 3 things I still need to do. I need to work on the further refinements, I need to do the compensation classification study, and I need to get the collective bargaining agreements all
Okay.
blended in there.
All right,
Okay,
so
we're meeting on January 6th, right?
so January 6th, we're going to basically,
Can we
what's going to
have all
happen January
those,
6th?
can we have all those numbers on January 6th?
I don't know if I'll have a full complement of the SBTF back.
See, that's the whole thing.
Harry, you're in
please.
charge of this.
We need some, we need help.
I've been
I'm
trying to-
sorry that, by the sounds of it, you're not feeling too well.
No, I'm still under the weather.
Okay.
The Sustainable Budget Task Force does need to convene and does need to continue. So we have focused at the Sustainable Budget Task Force on both revenues and expenditures. And we have also looked at the model, the forecasting model that
Yep.
has been prepared.
Correct.
So once we have the final numbers from costing out the classification and compensation study, as well as the collective bargaining negotiations, we need to drop those remaining numbers in. Those numbers are critical because from our conversation last Monday, as we talked about being a service organization, this is 75% of our budget.
Yep.
So the task force needs to get together with those numbers, drop those into the model, and make some additional refinements to some of the expense lines that are existing there. The Sustainable Budget Task Force should then make a recommendation and provide that to the town manager so that it can be incorporated in the option 2 or 5B or contingency budget. I think we're up to 4 different names for that now. But one of the things that I also asked for at the last Finance Committee meeting was for the Finance Committee to have a joint meeting with the Select Board
All right.
at the beginning of January to have a working session to go through this budget. So I anticipate that we will have a Sustainable Budget Task Force meeting
Yep.
within the next week to 10 days. It depends on scheduling and availability, that we will look at those models and come up with our recommendation, which will then be handed off to the town manager, and we will schedule that joint working session between those 2 boards. And I'm pointing at Finance Committee member over here as well. The school committee is certainly welcome to participate.
Friend, I think. When do you think you're going to have those groups of numbers?
From the Sustainable Budget Task Force?
No,
When can we be ready to
dump those numbers into the,
so we can start getting
Public
some
can
hard
know what
numbers
we're
here?
looking at.
Yep, so the goal is to have those available for your January 6th meeting. That's the
Okay.
goal.
Okay, great.
Can we have a member of the school committee, I think, wants to have a chat? Wants
Well,
to,
not as a member of the school,
oh,
so I'll wait for
Yeah.
oh, okay,
you still taking public questions.
right.
No,
Okay,
I mean, they're happy to, they can speak for themselves, but, yeah.
but we're going to have school.
You have what you need, right, from the schools?
We have the school's 2 submitted budgets, yes, they're 2 recommendations,
Okay.
correct.
It's done.
so January 6th, hopefully we'll have
Correct, and if I may, so the Finance Committee is scheduled to meet on Thursday of this week, and one of the items that they will be talking about is the school department's budget. I know that they are going to be looking at that, as well as looking at some of the positions that you guys heard about here this evening with respect to the compensation study. They will be covering some of those items on Thursday at their meeting.
So Danielle will be presenting the real needs budget.
Danielle has already presented that. Has been presented quite some time ago. The recording and the minutes and the agenda have been available to the public for quite some time.
Yep, okay, good.
Where is that information available? The school department info?
So if you go to the town's website, go to the finance page, my department, and there are 2 links on the left-hand navigation menu. One says Budget School, and one says Budget Town. If you click Budget School, it brings you right to the school's website where they have all of their budget materials posted.
That's the same material that I received in the pamphlet, right?
In the binder.
In the binder, yeah.
Correct.
Well, I ask because we're, I'm sure, all individually getting contacted by lots of different folks.
Oh, yeah.
Both pro and con.
Correct.
And I think it's important, and that's why I say this on the microphone, and Mary, thank you for providing the info, because people are looking for information.
Yep.
And this goes to your point, Fernando, about the process, because unless we're going to sort of upload to Rainey all the different comments we've received about what should be cut, what should be saved, what should be increased, all that stuff, there needs to be a forum for folks to be able to say their piece.
Correct.
Because we don't want to be doing this on town meeting floor. But by the time we get to town meeting, and I know this is where you're going, Rainey, with this, is everybody will hopefully have had an opportunity to speak to it, and maybe adjustments will be made. I think adjustments will have to be made in some respects, that when we get to town meeting to vote, that everybody's had a chance before then, and it's more of a pro forma exercise, as opposed to this the first time they're seeing it and they're going to have a big argument at town meeting floor.
Yeah, so Brian, thank you for eloquently stating what we should be doing between now and the town meeting. Exactly right.
I love your optimism
And
about
this
town
should be-
meeting. In fact, Jeff and I were talking about that earlier today, Mary. I wish that were the case. It won't be. Every line will get scrutinized, and not once, but twice, because of the way we have to lay it out.
Every line should be scrutinized.
Yes.
But I think you'll receive, it will be a much less painful
I hope you're
exercise
right.
on town meeting
Correct.
floor if this is the 11th or 12th time we've gone through it,
Yeah.
and folks have seen with their own eyes. I know we can tell them we're working hard, but unless they've seen it with their own eyes, I think that there's a bit of a hill to climb there.
But let me say, it's incredibly necessary to do it that way, because
Yes.
it also is
Oh,
going
I
to a
agree.
ballot box, and,
Yep.
you know,
Right.
people,
Because what happens on the floor of town meeting won't matter.
Correct.
It's the 22nd of March that matters.
it both matters. It doesn't get to the ballot box
Right,
unless,
but the-
you know,
the
you
rubber
need-
meets
you
the
need
road on the
two things,
22nd.
And if people don't feel that they were informed and that they didn't have a voice, they will not vote it at the ballot box, so.
Folks, it's 9:15. I'm going to open this up to the community. If anybody wants to add something tonight, we're going to have other opportunities, but you can certainly add something.
Friend Weiler, Vice Chairman of the Finance Committee. I'm not sure why we're meeting Thursday night. I've managed to pull together a forum just by the skin of our teeth, because so many people are traveling this time of the year. We thought we were going to get that Plan B budget on Thursday so we could start discussing what we could live with and what we couldn't live with. In the absence of getting that, I'm not sure we should be meeting. I did invite the school committee because I thought we were going to have both sides in the room at the same time.
I did too,
And we
friend.
could start to move forward.
Yeah.
I don't frankly want to bring one side in and have them on the spot feeling that, well, if we give something here and there and the town doesn't do their share, you know, it's going to be very awkward, and that was not the intent of the meeting. I'm not sure I should have a meeting. We should bother to have one if we cannot have a budget for us to sink our teeth into, and apparently we're not going to have it.
No, last week I had hoped that we would. We lost some time. I had hoped, in my conversation with the staff this morning, I could see that it wasn't going to happen.
Well,
And I'm not going to give you, I'm not going to give you half-baked information.
I'm sympathetic with the community as a large, represented by our Board of Selectmen, in that everyone is anxious to understand what we're going to be confronted with come March town meeting. And I know there's a lot of debate about why don't we have the number already, but I'll get over that pretty quickly. It's how soon are we going to get it? Now, you said you could come to our meeting Thursday night and provide everything except the collective bargaining numbers that you're projecting, and the impact of Article 4, the personnel plan. I mean, that's a lot of the budget that we could show our teeth into. Are you willing to present that to us?
What do you
or
think,
would
Mary? You think
rather
we could
not?
have that done by
If the
Thursday?
answer is no, I don't think we should meet.
Yeah, we can. Yeah, we can do that part, right?
But only if you're comfortable. I mean, if you're not there, you're not there. I mean, but I just think if I'm bringing these people in, I want them to have something to work on.
Yeah, I wouldn't have you vote it.
No, I had no intention of voting it.
Yeah.
No,
Trust me on that.
There's a long way before we go voting on stuff.
Afraid so.
Well,
But no,
remember, they've already seen the entire option 2 budget.
frustration that is
Every
being
page of
voiced
it.
by a lot of quarters is
Yeah.
ours as well, in that we haven't really had anything that we can give them in terms of even a range. If we
Yeah.
could speak to, it's between A and B, I mean, it would be helpful so people could think about it, but I think there's a reluctance to try to cast a number at this time because you're afraid people are going to seize on that number, and then when the number's either a little bit bigger or a little different, it's going to be hard for them to swallow. You said it was going to be 5.5, now it's 5.9. And I don't think you should fear that as much as you're worried about it. We've just got to have a working number that is bound to change
Yeah.
with negotiations, either up or down.
And those could be the numbers, but without the sustainability aspect. That's the problem.
Well, I think we should maybe think a little bit tomorrow about whether we should have the meeting on Thursday, because
Yeah.
at this point, I don't think I have anything really to discuss.
Yeah.
I don't have anything really to work with.
Yeah, you and I and Mary can chat afterwards.
Thank you.
Yeah, sure.
Hi. Matt Gambino, Mayflower Street. I'm a member of the school committee, but I'm not speaking in that capacity tonight. So I have something prepared that I think touches upon what's been discussed. And then, with your permission, after I read this little bit, I'd just like to give a little editorial comment to sort of respond to the conversation, particularly around refining the budgets. Is that okay? All right, so here's the prepared statement. I want to share some observations and suggestions regarding the importance of transparency in this year's budget process, something I believe everyone in this room values. At last Monday's Select Board meeting, I refrained from speaking a second time, though I felt compelled to after Deirdre Weiler's comments and the response she received. Her question about a ballpark contingency budget number was met with the explanation that the balanced budget must first be considered in isolation as a matter of procedure. Reasonable people understand that a contingency budget depends largely on analyzing the real needs budgets. The issue is that these real needs budgets, along with their presentations and narratives, are nowhere to be found. They were due on October 1st, and I see no reason why they weren't posted publicly that week. Instead, taxpayers are being asked to wait for a select board recommendation on a contingency number without the ability to scrutinize the real needs budgets fueling it. Unless, of course, we email someone on the finance committee or file a public records request. That's important, just to stop for a second. I believe a big fueling factor of this contingency is the real needs budgets. But so far, I can't find it. I can only see the schools one. Okay, so let me just continue. So my first suggestion to the select board, please post the real needs budgets promptly. There's no procedural bylaw, as far as I can see, that prevents proactively sharing them. I think that'll clear up a lot of the problem. I know that there has to be refining to these budgets, but personally, I don't think it's fair for the public not to see those budgets and to depend on other people to refine them before they see them. Why wouldn't I see the police department's real needs budget? So far, all I can do to understand the police department's real needs budget is to look at a recording last week about his impassioned speech. I don't see the numbers. I don't see the narrative. I don't see the presentation. I see nothing. And that's not because I think anyone's hiding anything. You know, it's really, really interesting. This is the third time I'll tell this story. Last week, a community member called me and asked me, he said, Matt, because I'm on the school committee, Matt, what are the other real needs budgets? And I said, I'm embarrassed to tell you, I don't know. She said, you don't know the roll-up? I said, no. And you know what she said? She said, why are they hiding that from us? I don't think you're hiding anything, but I think that you're going about this in a wrong-headed way. I get the classification study and I get the collective bargaining, but let's not let the perfect be the enemy of the good. A big chunk of this contingency ballpark number that Mrs. Weiler asked for, I believe, is fueled by the real needs budgets. I'm not an attorney, but I would think that we're legally obligated to post those artifacts. If a public official shares it with another public official, this is what I hear on school committee, that's got to be made public. So I think a lot of the anger that you guys are talking about and that you're sensing is that no one knows what these real needs budgets are. I didn't know until the last week's finance committee meeting. We got hard copies of the members, and I was an attendee as a just a community member. We got a spreadsheet that allowed the finance committee to go line by line on staffing needs and everything. But I happened to notice at the end there's a roll-up of like the 7 or 8 or 9 departments, including the education department, of their real needs budget, that what you guys call budget option 2. It's the first time I saw it. So I had to add it up and extrapolate percentages, drawn from fiscal year 25, to know that, at least according to that spreadsheet, and I'm going by memory here, general government is asking for 9.3%. That might be a really valid real needs. My guess is it is, because I trust our department heads. But I haven't seen the real needs budget. I haven't seen the presentation. I haven't seen the narrative. I haven't heard anything. The only way to do it is to go back and try to scour through finance committee recordings. Some of them are available, some aren't. I mean, I'd have to get screenshots from watching a video. That's embarrassing. At this late stage, that is embarrassing. And I'm not trying to be preachy. I'm always, typically accused of, Matt, you're not a team player, we're all in this together. I get it, I am a team player, we're all in this together. That doesn't sort of excuse the absence of information. That's all people are looking for. I don't think people are looking for a blood oath on what exactly the number is, but for Christ's sake, give me the real needs budgets. Now, the other part I was going to talk about, I think, has been covered. The Sustainable Budget Task Force. I respect the work that I think those folks are doing. I think they've met 18 times. In preparing for today, for preparing these comments, I wanted to make sure I covered my bases. So I looked at the website, the Sustainable Budget Task Force website. I was surprised to know that those meetings aren't posted publicly. And so last week, I heard, Betsy Sullivan say, the most reviled words in her opinion in government is trust me. But all I can draw from that is that I need to trust the Sustainable Budget Task Force to do work privately to come up with a recommendation that I'm going to be paying for as a taxpayer. I would like optics on that. I would like to be able to attend those meetings. One of the things that you said last week, Rainey, was like, stay informed, attend meetings, give feedback, and ask questions. Mm-hmm. So starting backwards, I'm asking questions and I'm giving feedback. I'd like to be informed, and I'm attending meetings, and I'd like to attend more. So thank you for listening.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, just so the public knows, we haven't, at least I haven't, seen these real needs budgets. So
None of us have seen the real needs budget. So I think you can understand that we're frustrated as well. So
I think it's in your control.
You got to go to the.
Sorry. Not to be glib, I don't know what I'm missing here. You're the select board. Get the real needs budgets and post them. They were due on October 1st.
Where did you
It's
get
December
that?
16th.
What's October 1st?
October 1st is some of the presentations. I heard that on October 1st, 2 budgets were due to the town manager. A level services plus 2.5 and a real needs budget. I believe those were due on October 1st.
To him, yeah. So what
And I think,
Feel free to respond to any of this.
are they with the finance committee minutes? I mean, I know that they've reviewed all of them. And are they with the minutes? I don't even know.
I can tell you, there were some minutes that just talk about, it's almost like, well, no,
I meant as
would
an
be insulting.
attachment.
There are some minutes that say, Department X is asking for 16%, others are, but there's no table, there's no tabular information to say that this was our budget, this is the budget we're asking for, and this is why. There are some videos that I've watched that show a department head giving a presentation similar to Dr. Klingeman's presentation with slides and everything, but the finance, this isn't a criticism, I'm just stating a fact. The finance committee does not typically put artifacts, at least to my liking, right before and after the meetings. Rainey mentioned a few minutes ago that we're putting a lot of information on the finance committee website. I agree, but it all terminates at level services stuff. All the budget A or the option ones are there. That gets to my earlier comments. Where's the option 2 stuff? That's been out there. You've been sharing it with one another. Why don't I see it? Especially since I'm going to be the one helping to pay for it.
I'm going to let the folks respond.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I'll have to, Mary and I'll have to look and see what we can get you. We'll get it out there.
How about all of us? I mean, what?
The collective.
Not
yeah.
just Matt.
The collective.
Well, that's the
We
thing.
don't-
I don't want this to be perceived as like I'm being a pain in the ass, so, send it to me and I'll be happy. This is about everyone getting
I don't go to
eyes
all the
on the
finance committee
information.
meetings. In fact, I go to very few of them. Mary's done a great job covering them, so I don't have to go to as many as I used to. So we'll get together and figure out what we can push out there, and we'll push it out there.
You said, Mr. Gambino, you addressed me.
Mr. Gambino, we are trying to get that information. I think you can sense that we, too, are desperately trying to move this along in the most transparent, fair, reasonable way that we can. So,
Well, thank you. And I honestly, I don't mean to be too hard on anybody. It's just, I think it's important, so I appreciate it.
I think when this meeting happens in January, I want to be able to speak not just to this background of what these real needs budgets are, but in a language that people understand. What is this going to cost the average taxpayer over this sustainable period? And I think that's, and that's something that people are going to want to know going forward. And that's the numbers that I'm talking about.
That is the sole objective. Because if I can tell you what it will cost you, then you can make a decision as to whether or not you want to support it.
Yep.
I don't care how old you are, 18 or 88.
Yep.
That will determine
We'll need to know
it's
what
what
this
the
is.
individual can
and
afford.
I think people are going to need to be reminded, what the average impact of the DPW project on their tax
PFAS
bill.
project you'll be hearing about on Monday.
Yeah.
There's
on the
a
6th.
lot going on.
Oh, we're meeting on the,
On the 6th, yeah,
which day?
January.
January the
Because
6th.
you're going to hear about a $38 million PFAS project that would be coming up this year too.
So January 6th then, is that the date of the joint meeting with the Finance Committee, the Select Board, to look at the work of the Sustainable Budget Task Force?
No.
I don't know yet, Fernando.
Well,
Okay.
you guys will have to talk that over.
Yeah.
Let's talk it over, but we need to, again, I'm going
Be transparent.
to, I want to be transparent. All these conversations should be
In public.
in public, and the public needs to have the opportunity to share.
I agree. I'd like to know what's going on as chair of the select board. That's the honest to goodness truth.
I think we've made progress.
I think we have, believe it or not.
I have a headache.
I do too. Anybody else? All right, there being none, I'd like to move on. Do we need to do the discussion and renew of annual common victualler? Is this a mandatory requirement before 2020?
Yes.
Okay. Can we do
I don't
that?
have the list, though.
Now you do. In paper.
Oh, all right.
I have a motion, please.
I move that the Select Board renew the following Class 2 auto, general, and common victualler licenses as presented on the attached lists for the year 2025. I think that's calendar year 2025, right? Subject to satisfactory inspection by the Municipal Services Department and the Board of Health, receipt of all renewal requirements and payment of all fees and funds owed to the town of Duxbury. Let's see, hold on here.
Do you have to read
And
them?
I can go through pretty quickly, I think. I'm not going to read the license numbers.
Is this still the motion?
Yeah, this is still the motion. For Class 2 Auto, Bayside Marine Corp., Millbrook Auto Sales. For General, Surf Dogs. For Common Vitular, Alden Elementary School, Bay Path at Duxbury, Benchwarmer Sub Shop, Breadboard at Duxbury High School, Chandler School, Bonji's Turkey Roost, Camp Wing / Keene Street, Depot Street Market, Durazio's, Dunkin' Donuts, 5 Chestnut Street, Duxbury Deli, Duxbury High School / nonprofit, Duxbury Middle School / nonprofit, Duxbury Pizza, Duxbury Senior Center nonprofit, Farfar's Danish Ice Cream, First Parish Church nonprofit, Sama Food Company, DBA French Memories, Camp Wing, Myrtle Street, Gunther Tooties, Holy Family Church / nonprofit. There are 3 that say open. I don't know what that is. I'll skip those. Seabird Coffee and Company, Scoops, the ice cream shop, Snug Harbor Fish Company, Soul Bowl Duxbury, Uncommon Grounds, the Foodsmith LLC, Fire and Stone Trattoria and Pizza Bar, Peel Pizza, the shop at Island Creek, Oyster, 296 Park Street, Yummy Sushi, Namaste Cafe, Duxbury House at the Village Memory Care Residence, and finally, First Baptist Church of Duxbury. We need a second, and
Second.
it does not need to be roll call. Good.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All right, town manager's report.
It's been all about the budget.
All right, thank you.
Yep.
Announcements.
We also have a seasonal population estimate.
What we do?
Yeah,
Oh, we do?
yeah, that's,
You do.
it's the
Where is
end
it?
of the last.
Yeah, just new business.
Oh, okay.
All right, so, let's see. General Law, Chapter 138, Section 17 requires that an annual estimate of temporary increased resident population shall be made prior to March 1 in any year for the purpose of establishing a quota for seasonal liquor licenses that a town may issue. And we have that in our packets. It's a one-pager from the ABCC
Yep.
with a calculation.
Thank you, sir.
I will use that document for this motion. I move that the Select Board certify the Alcoholic Beverages Control Commission, based on information from the assessor and town clerk, that the estimated temporary resident total population as of July 10th, 2025 will be 18,907, which is the current population of 16,473, plus an estimated increase of summer population of 2,434, which equals the 18,907.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Announcements.
We have a lot of announcements.
Feel free to use editorial.
So I'm just gonna rip
Discretion.
right into it here. Number 1, 2025 dog licenses. 2024 dog license expire December 31st. A mail-in renewal form will be included with the annual census for those wishing to renew a dog license by mail. Licenses may also be purchased at the town clerk's office or by using the online ordering system. A link to the online system can be found at the town's website at www.town.duxbury.ma.us. Dog licenses are $17 for intact animals and $12 for spayed or neutered animals, and free to pet owners 70 years of age or older. Number 2, 2025 Duxbury dog walking permits. Dog walking permits are required to take your dog on town of Duxbury / conservation land and the beach. Resident dogs must be licensed with the town in order to obtain a dog walking permit. Dog walking permits are currently $10 per dog and free to pet owners 70 years of age or older. Number 3, census. The 2025 annual census will be mailed shortly. Please take a moment to sign the form making changes if necessary and return it to the town clerk's office. Per the Massachusetts general laws, failure to return the census shall result in removal from the active voting list. Number 4, vote by mail. Voting by mail is available for all elections. A vote by mail application will be included in the census mailing. If you would like to vote by mail for elections scheduled during the 2025 calendar year, please return a completed and signed application to the town clerk's office. A ballot will be sent as soon as it is available. Currently, the only scheduled election in 2025 is the annual town election on March 22nd. Speaking of which, number 5, nomination papers for the town election. The following offices will be on the ballot for the 2025 town election. 1 select board member for a term of 3 years.
I didn't.
1 assessor for a term of 3 years. 1 moderator for a term of 3 years. 1 town clerk for a term of 3 years. 2 school committee members for a term of 3 years. 1 planning board member for a term of 5 years. 1 planning board member for an unexpired term of 2 years. 2 library trustees for a term of 3 years. And 1 Duxbury Housing Authority member for a term of 5 years. Nomination papers are available at the town clerk's office and are due back to the town clerk by Friday, January 31st, 2025. A candidate must obtain 50 signatures certified with the town clerk to appear on the ballot. Holiday closures for 2024 and 2025. Town Hall. The Duxbury Town Hall will be closed on the following days: Wednesday, December 25th, Christmas Day, and Wednesday, January 1st, New Year's Day. Council on Aging will be closed on the following days: Tuesday, December 24th, Christmas Day, Christmas Eve, Wednesday the 25th, Christmas Day, and Wednesday the 1st, New Year's Day. The Duxbury Free Library hours are as follows: Tuesday, December 24th, which is Christmas Eve, open 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. Closed Christmas Day. New Year's Eve, open 11 a.m. to 5 p.m. Closed all day, January 1st. The Percy Walker Pool will be closed on Christmas and New Year's. The transfer station will also be closed on Christmas and New Year's. The next Select Board meeting will be on January 6th, 2025, at 6:30 p.m. in the Mural Room. We're not done yet,
Oh, he's got to say it, and it's late.
because we have a
Shellfish. Let's go.
bonus shellfish season.
All right.
I told Jake we have to call this something else. I move that the Select Board declare a temporary bonus shellfish season for 1, the commercial harvesting of soft-shell clams for the month of January, and the commercial harvesting of quahog clams for the month of January. Requires a second and a vote.
Second, please.
Second.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
I move to adjourn.
Aye.
So moved.
Second.
Merry Christmas.
Merry
everybody.
Christmas, everybody.